Okay. You might want to just start sharing your screen before you do that to the presentation.
Yep.
That's it. Picture reminds me how much I like drone footage.
Mm-hmm.
It's really sharp.
Is it 4 o'clock? It's 4 o'clock.
Let's do this. It's 4 o'clock.
We're jumping in.
Let's go.
Okay.
Hi.
So I'm Elena Tamer, everybody who's here and everybody who's watching online. I'm the planner for the city of Plattsburgh. And I just wanted to thank everyone for joining the conversation tonight. We only have about an hour, so I'll keep this intro brief, but I just wanted to say that the city is very excited to embark on this large-scale planning effort to help guide future development. So the city's current comprehensive plan was drafted way back in 1999 in response to the base closure. So here we are 20 years later, and we're taking a hard look and surveying, sorry, that's my dog. We're surveying the existing conditions of the city and coming up with a strategic plan to for the city to move forward towards economic stability. But not just economic stability, we want to call it economic success. So I emphasize economics because it's a huge driver behind the vitality of a place. We know that place is more than just economics, it's people and the social fabric we weave as a community. So we're here tonight to hear from you. We're here tonight to hear from the community. We want to make sure that this plan is, one, comprehensive, two, it's a people's plan. Because, like I said, you are who we are planning for. And a comprehensive plan is supposed to be a blueprint. It's an instruction guide. It's a vision board, basically. It's not the government saying, this is how the city should function and this is what development should happen. We can't make those decisions without hearing from the public. So that's why we're here tonight. The plan that we're working on drafting is going to be based on existing conditions, public feedback, which we're going to get tonight, and then research and best practices. So for example, what makes San Francisco and New York City such cool places that people want to live and they want to visit? And how do we, capture some of that here in Plattsburgh? So the first part of the presentation, we're going to go through some existing conditions in Plattsburgh and kind of get your feedback as to how you interact with that environment. And that will help us identify what makes Plattsburgh special and how can we focus on that and build upon those efforts. And then next we want to know what's missing. What other opportunities do we have in Plattsburgh to make this a more viable environment for us to live in? And then we're going to dive into your neighborhood. So the first neighborhood we're talking about tonight is Ward 1. And we want to get some information from you to help develop our land use guide and our zoning laws. We'll talk about some opportunities for change, and maybe you'll tell us like, hey, we like that our neighborhoods have large yards and no sidewalks. And we'll take that feedback and we'll incorporate that into our plan and help draft our land use and zoning. And then we're going to present a number of questions similar to those in the questionnaire. We'll take a poll from everybody, and you'll be asked to answer those poll questions. You only have about 30 seconds to answer, but the questions are super easy, so don't worry. And then we can have a conversation around those poll answers. And like I said, tonight, our first session is on Ward 1, but of course, if you don't live in Ward 1, or if you don't even live in the city, that's fine. Participate in the conversation. We want to hear from you. We know that the city of Plattsburgh is not an island, and it supports a larger North Country region. So everybody's comments will be, taken and incorporated into this plan. Boring stuff, all the Zoom etiquette applies tonight. So everybody is muted right now. Please, leave your mics muted until, you'd like to make a comment or ask a question. And please use the raise hand option to be able to do that, just so we can make sure that everybody gets heard. Lastly, we want this to be fun. So, please stick around until the end. We'll be serving free virtual pizza. I'm kidding, there's no pizza. We wish that we could do this in person. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we have to do this virtually, but we still are going to try to make this interactive and fun and try to make it beneficial for everybody, the public and the city. So with that being said, we can jump right in. I'd like to introduce our consultants who are going to be helping to draft the plan. We have Saratoga Associates on the call with us, and we have Behan Planning. So if you guys would like to introduce yourselves, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Dan Shear with Saratoga Associates. Really pleased to be with our frequent collaborators, Behan Planning. One thing Milena said that I think is the most important part of this discussion today is that we really want your feedback. And so just provide your thoughts, because that's really going to help shape the direction for this project in the future. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to our project manager, Emily Gardner.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. As Dan mentioned, my name is Emily Gardner, and I'm the project manager for Saratoga Associates. You might have seen me before for the waterfront discussions or discussions about the design of the arts park, but tonight I'm excited to hear about everyone's comments for the city as a whole. So thanks for being here. And John?
Okay, thanks, Emily. Hi, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon. John Behan here, Behan Planning Design. So happy to finally be at this point, to have this public meeting. And as a proud graduate of Plattsburgh State University, so glad to be working. I have so many fond memories and so many things I can't remember. So thank you for that. And Michael Allen is my longtime associate, and he's working on this project as part of our team. Michael.
Yep, Michael, and I'll leave it at that so we can get started.
Okay. So this first slide is just an overview of zoning in your neighborhood, which is Ward 1. Zoning controls what uses are allowed and the parameters around those uses. So how big can a building be, how dense a site can be, and other design standards. So in Ward 1, which is South Plattsburgh, it's a mix of zoning from industrial in the West End to residential and general business along Route 9, and then recreation related uses along the waterfront. I think it's a great mix of zoning in this neighborhood, but I think it could be like just a little bit more flexible. And that's one of the goals of our comprehensive plan and our zoning update, is to find out how can we be more flexible to allow for more uses and more growth. You guys just see a black screen because that's what I see right now.
We're still seeing the ward map.
Okay,
No, we see the
what about
ward.
the ward map? You see that now?
No.
Okay, sorry. So this slide is just a basic map of Ward 1. I just wanted to highlight the area that we're talking about during this work session, which is the area highlighted in red. Again, it's South Plattsburgh. It's predominantly defined by housing and services that developed around the former Air Force Base, the Oval, and some industrial development along the Saranac River. So like I said, a majority of this presentation, this workshop is going to be polls to keep it interactive and to get your feedback. So this is our first poll question, and it is, what is your favorite thing about Plattsburgh and why do you choose to live here? So we're gonna put a poll up on the screen and you'll have an opportunity to answer that. Again, we'll just give you about 30 seconds to do so. The results are rolling in.
Yep.
About 4 more seconds. All right, poll
And
master.
looks like we're just about everybody's voted. There we go. And you should be seeing the results right now. All right. So it looks like of the items, the historic district is among the favorite items, as well as the natural assets and walkability are some of the favorite elements of Plattsburgh. Okay.
So I don't know if you guys think we need to discuss this any further or move on to the next one. I know this is not really a deep dive question.
Well, I know that, and you know, in other times that we've done this poll, the natural assets always comes out, you know, high up there. I wasn't sure if anybody wanted to elaborate on what particular, any particular assets that, in general, rather than just generically. If anybody has any uh, comments on that, if you could use your raise hand feature and let us know which particular items it are that you're thinking about. Anybody?
And I think maybe also interesting to note here is we are looking at, South Plattsburgh with the area of the Oval, and maybe that's leading to the interest in the historic district as some of people's favorite
Mhm.
features.
Absolutely.
And I'd be interested to know if there are specific
There's a hand raised.
recreational opportunities. Looks like somebody with their iPhone has their hand raised. Go ahead and give them the mic here.
Okay.
Oh, you should have the ability to speak.
Hi, this is Danielle Erb. I live right on the river walk, the Saranac River Trail, and I love it. I love living there. I love having, it's right across the street from me. I can just, let my kids walk on there, and the Maxmore Treehouse is great, but it's a beautiful spot in the city that I think is kind of a little underappreciated in the flats. That's Ward 2, but very close, right across the river from Ward 1.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, thank you.
Should we move on to the next poll?
Sure thing. Okay, I stopped sharing that. And for our next question, we wanted to get, you've got the slide up. What types of development do you feel the city needs more of? And I'm going to go ahead and launch this right now. So do you think the city needs more commercial office or residential housing, industrial light manufacturing, mixed use, or do you think we're good, or did we miss something?
About 10 seconds.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end that and share the results. This is pretty definitive here. It looks like mixed use is the highest rated item of them all, followed by pretty much a tie with residential housing and industrial light manufacturing. So one thing we've noticed in some of the other polls is that just general residential and mixed use tend to score pretty highly. So that's good. And nobody selected other, so I was going to ask if anybody wanted to offer what the other is. Okay.
So I'll just comment here real quick. I love that most people picked mixed use as the answer, because one of the, points of this exercise is to find out if people at the neighborhood level would like to see more mixed use in their neighborhoods, because predominantly, the neighborhoods are zoned residential, and that's all that's allowed by use. So I think this is great feedback to get.
And a thing I would add is I'm interested in what elements of mixed use the neighborhood is interested in. And Michael, I see Lorraine has her hand
Yep.
up.
Lorraine, I'm going to go ahead and give you, looks like Lorraine, you should be able to speak now.
Okay. I noticed people there from Saratoga Associates. I moved up here from Saratoga Springs. Wow.
Oh, okay.
Oh, hello.
I hope it wasn't because of us.
No, I hope not. So the mixed use is interesting. I know I live on the west side I have a single family house in the air base. And I think west side could really use an facelift in the shopping center, I forget what they call it, Skyway Plaza. So
Mhm.
I'm thinking if they had mixed use where they, had apartments or condos and then had the supermarket and the hardware stores and all the little retail stores also, there's a huge amount of space there where they could really develop that nicely and make it very attractive for the west side.
Okay. Thank you.
That's my thought.
That kind of leads into the segue. Is there anybody else that wants to give us some idea of why they favored mixed use, or why mixed use is something that the city needs? Looking to see. I'll leave that open for a moment. If we can probably still move on to the next question then. And leading to Lorraine's point, about could use a facelift. How would you characterize the current physical condition of Plattsburgh? Do you believe it's well maintained, needs some love, or do you think it's in poor condition or worse?
Well, I will say that was a pretty quick vote compared to the previous ones. I think we're getting responses in a little faster here.
Yep. Well, okay. Go ahead. I'm going to close that and share the results. And it looks like needs some love and poor condition are basically kind of tied. So that's good. That shows us. I mean, it's good result because it shows us that we need to focus on some stuff. And this is an easy one. I made note that I wanted to know what elements of the city do people feel need the most attention. What can we do that would make the biggest difference, I guess, in the city? If there's folks that would like to offer any thoughts on that or insight, what do you think would make the biggest difference in just general maintenance and cleanup?
Right. Is it repaving? Is it new sidewalks? Is it handicap accessibility? Is it additional landscaping, other beautification efforts? I mean, the city knows, and DPW has a list of capital projects they try to get through every year. But obviously we want your feedback. Like Michael just said, what should we focus on? What would make, downtown more appealing, more accessible, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. And maybe Lorraine would like to offer something on that. And since we're trying to keep things moving here, if you can't decide on what you want to say just right away, you can always add it later. Lorraine, go ahead. I think, did you? No, perhaps they went back to muting themselves. I'm going to go to Ira.
Hi. Couple of things strike me about this. First of all, still have a lot of vacant buildings downtown and storefronts that need modernization, rehabilitation, not necessarily making them modern, but rehabilitation of the storefronts. That it becomes much more attractive and engaging for people, even if they're just walking the streets downtown. And secondly, I think I will just throw in City Hall. It's an extremely poor looking building when you come into the city. For a beautiful building, if you look at it, the windows are falling apart, the doors look terrible. It just needs, city needs to spend some money maintaining the maintenance and the infrastructure in the buildings that it owns in the city. And finally, we've tried to create a little bit more walkability with some bike lanes. I think the only one is on in front of City Hall Place. We really need to take a look at how do we strike that balance between cars and sidewalks and bikes, and provide a little bit more bike access to the whole of the downtown area.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ira. I'm going to go back. Lorraine, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I actually, City Hall was what I was thinking as well. Just as a new person, I just thought, wow, that's such a gorgeous building architecturally. But it's really a person's first impression when they come to town is what does the city think of itself? And if you have a beautiful city hall that's all, at least painted on the outside, it gives you a good first impression.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I was thinking is, wouldn't it be great to make sure the corridors into Plattsburgh are welcoming? Right now, I think Route 3, when you get into the city, it's kind of, like you said, needs love.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit more regulation.
Thank you. Okay. And then the folks, I don't know your name, but you're joining us via iPhone. Did you have something that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, this is Danielle again. I think that the streets, repaving of the streets and the sidewalks are in a lot of need to make them more accessible. Bike lanes and crosswalks, signage for pedestrians, especially in my neighborhood, the flats, which is like down behind the police station. There are roads that you could shovel up, they're just completely falling apart. Walworth was redone last year, which was great, but I had tried to get a sidewalk put in. I had asked the city to consider that. It was prior to the complete streets policy being put in place, which was just happened a couple council meetings ago. And they decided not to do that, which was, I think, very unfortunate because there's the middle school is right there. It also connects to the river trail, but the side that the river trail is on, the sidewalk ends. And, I worked on some projects about safe routes to school for kids in Massachusetts. And that was a big thing to try to get safe crossings at all sides of the school so that kids can walk to school safer. And that intersection has no crosswalks, no signs. And I actually went down the street, down Walworth prior to the work being done, and asked the residents living there if they would like to have a sidewalk, and they all said yes. And I've even had some people tell me that they don't let their children walk that way because of the safety issue. So, it's a main connector to the downtown from the south side, that street, Pine Street, goes right into downtown from there as well. So that would greatly improve walkability for, the Ward 1 and Ward 2 areas to get downtown.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Well, that leads us to the sort of opposite end of the spectrum of the questions. Our next slide is, wants to ask, what's your favorite thing about your neighborhood? Why do you choose to live where you do? Wanted to get some insight on that. I mean, part of the reason we're doing this, as Milena mentioned, is we want to identify what are things you'd like to change and what are things you'd like to stay the same. So this would be, what do you want to keep the same, or what's the favorite thing about where you live right now? We'll keep this open for a little bit longer. And it looks like everybody thinks that their ward is the best. Okay. location. We're going to go ahead and end this poll and share the results. Location is the number one. Everybody, as I was joking, this was also highest rated in some of the other polls. Everybody thinks that their ward is the best place to live, which is good. Housing availability, access to services with safety coming in second. So that's good. I'd be interested to know what it is about folks' neighborhoods that draws them to that area. Is it proximity to services and so forth? If folks have any thoughts on that, we can get into that. And then looking at our next question we hear, what do you feel is missing in your neighborhood? Go ahead and launch this. Is it job opportunities or transportation options, walkability, housing? And here we have a much more diverse result here. Interesting. Okay. And go ahead and end this and share the results. It looks like transportation options, cultural activities, and recreational resources are among the highest ranking items right here.
I will say from, like we said earlier, this questionnaire is on the city's website and it's also been on social media, and it's been overwhelming results that this question is answered. Recreational resources are missing in people's neighborhoods and wards, which I think is really interesting because the city has 20 something parks, but people still feel that recreational resources are missing. And I think we need to figure out, why do people feel that way? I mean, is it our parks are underdeveloped? They aren't, so maybe someone can let us know why they feel that way.
Yeah, that's the follow-up question, is what recreational items do folks want to Jacqueline, I believe. I'm going to go ahead and give you the mic if you want to share your thoughts.
My guess is that has a lot to do with the fact that City Gym is in Ward 1, and the fact a lot of us chose to live there because of its proximity to the Oval and to all the activities that the Oval provides, and City Gym is very much tied into that. And I think, just talking to my neighbors, a lot of us use that resource for the gym resources, for the bike, not for the bike path, but for the track, and for just the space that it gives us in Ward 1. And I know that you're facing some choices about that gym, but I think, it's such, when we're talking about buildings looking run down and the resources you have, this is a great resource. You don't really have any other sort of space that belongs to the city like that gym. And I just want to stress how important I think that is to the people who have chosen to live on the Oval and around that space. So I think if you're seeing that uptick, it's probably because a lot of us are feeling like that's missing.
Okay.
It's also important to note too that the CBPH Wellness Center, which is also near Ward 1, also closed recently. So that's understandable.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, Ira has also raised his hand.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and give Ira up. Somebody beat me to it. You don't have one person in control of this, but Ira,
and I just want to echo the comments that Jacqueline Halleck made. I encourage people to stop referring to it as a gym. It's more than a gym. It's one of the few community centers that we have in the city of Plattsburgh, where on a Saturday morning you can come in and see families having birthday parties with their kids. You can see senior citizens in the lower level of the gym engaging in activities. You can see, I'll call them mostly seniors. They're not all seniors, with pickleball programs. There were potentially 150, I think, seniors that were playing pickleball in that gym. So there's the walking track that she mentioned that was, I think everybody in Ward 1 throughout this winter has desperately missed that walking track out there. And it's a social activity as much as it is. And people aren't racing around that walking track and running. They're talking to people when they walk around that walking track. So it's much more than a gym. And I think we need to see that as for what it is, an extremely valuable resource to the city and to this ward.
Okay. Just quickly, I want to give the mic to Danielle, and then I think we're going to pause comments for a little bit so we can get through some of these poll questions and then open it up at the end because I want to make sure we're on track here. Danielle, what did you want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to totally agree and say I wonder, because it's also a historic site, and I wonder if that has been explored in terms of funding, trying to get it fixed up if there are funds out there for that. Also, the parks are great, but they could use some more actual programming and activities. And we are also, we live in the winter here like most of the year. So it makes it, Fox Hill is great, but yeah.
Okay. Good point. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to the next question we wanted to ask, getting back to the transportation, is finding out how many times a week do you, walk or bike to areas downtown, in your neighborhood. Trying to get a feel for how convenient some of the local services are and shops and attractions are in your neighborhood, and if more needs to be done in that regard. And as a side, I mentioned that I believe we should all have the ability to chat. So if you have a question that you want to make sure we cover it later, feel free to type it into the chat box, which the opening for that should be at the bottom of your screen. Okay. How many times a week do you shop or eat downtown within walking or biking distance? I'm going to go ahead and end this and share the results. It looks like most folks 1 to 3 times a week or 3+. So it's good that nobody here is a robot. I just noticed that. So that's good. One of the questions I wanted to learn from folks who've asked this, is there something that would make them want to walk or bike in their neighborhood more? In other words, is there a certain type of shop or service that you'd like to see in your neighborhood that would make you get out more? Or is it more a matter of the infrastructure, the sidewalks and streets, that's the main barrier or so forth? If you have any thoughts on that, feel free to type them up in the chat. Okay. And for the next question, Milena, did you want to take the lead on this? Because I think you wanted to kind of describe the 15-minute neighborhood.
Sure. So the whole point of this poll is to kind of track your behavior in hopes of developing what's called a 15-minute neighborhood concept in the city. So in Plattsburgh, it's probably more like a 5 to 7 minute neighborhood. But basically it means that each neighborhood should fulfill 6 functions. So it's living, working, supplying, caring, learning, and enjoying, all within that 5 to 7 minute walking distance of your residence. Obviously, each function is broad and means different things to different people, but the underlying theme is convenience. So humans, especially Americans, we crave convenience. We all know that our phones are tracking us all the time, but it's kind of cool to look at Google Maps to look at the radius that you travel in a month. And unless you have like a job that requires a lot of travel, it's surprising to see how small your bubble really is. I believe most people stay within a 30-mile radius the majority of the time. Of course, there's always going to be specific things that take you outside of that radius, but the point of this is to try and increase convenience in your neighborhood by allowing certain things in the built environment. Of course, we know this convenience doesn't satisfy all of our human needs and desires. We're still social creatures. So at the same time, I think the city needs to focus on not only creating, the 7-minute neighborhood by land use, but creating that strong social fabric downtown with cool public spaces and fostering small businesses and events, et cetera. But anyway, this poll is supposed to help us determine what's missing in your neighborhood that prevents this level of convenience and how we can increase it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Melina. So I'm going to go ahead. It looks like maybe most of the folks have voted. Share the results. So the number one destination when you run errands for something other than work is the grocery store, followed by retail, parks, and other. So retail, it's therapy. So, okay, that's good. One of the things that we're looking at is, as Melina mentioned, is, are there needs for little localized commercial nodes in different neighborhoods to provide, little shops and services that are more in tune with what their needs are. Okay. And I'm just checking to see, I'll stop sharing there. And as I mentioned, if there's a particular shop or service in, that you'd like to see in sort of walking distance of your house, feel free to add it into chat. I know Danielle noted that clearing the snow on the footpath in the winter with the same efficiency as expected by homeowners would use it much more in the winter. It's a good point. Do we want to move on to the next?
Yep.
So this is getting to some of the characteristics of their neighborhood. How comfortable do you feel in your neighborhood walking at any time of the day? I'm going to feel for sort of the safety levels. While we're thinking about that, Jamie noted that it'd be nice to see a Whole Foods or a Publix in Ward 1.
Ties into a little bit that if you are getting in your car, it's likely to go to the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe the farmer's market.
And Lorraine noted being semi-retired, working from home, downtown is too far a walk from Main Road. It's a good point. Okay, so going to go ahead and end this poll and share the results. And it seems like a majority of folks feel comfortable walking in their neighborhood any time of day. One person noted they didn't. I'd love to know. That's the one person I want to talk to. So if that was you, send me a message or put it in chat or raise your hand because I'd like to know what's the issue there. And
maybe
stop sharing.
Lighting or sidewalks or traffic is too fast or something, but we would love to know.
Right. I know one of the things we wanted to talk about is crossing some of the main boulevards. Those tend to be a barrier to people. So, okay. And next question is, do you feel it's important for the city to establish design standards for commercial or residential or industrial development? One of the things that we've heard from folks is that the city could use a little TLC, some tender, care as far as cleanup, fix up. Some design standards might go a long way toward that. Actually, I forgot to launch the poll. There we go. So how do you feel that it's important to have that? The city can only kind of, I guess, try and maintain what it can, what it has the ability to, what it has jurisdiction over. City doesn't have jurisdiction over private land, so we kind of have to rely on the private sector to do a good job developing things. And I'll give this a few more seconds, but it looks like just about everybody's voted now. And I'm going to go ahead and end that and share the results. And the majority of folks feel yes, it would be. Once again, it's the folks that vote no that they're the interesting ones. They're the ones that I want to find out what their concerns might be, or is there a reason why design standards? Are you concerned that it might be a disincentive to redevelopment? Let me know.
Michael, there are some comments in the chat regarding some development at Skyway.
Okay. Jacqueline pointed out that a Whole Foods or a Publix would be perfect for the Skyway. The Skyway Shopping Center, Ira noted, needs to be renovated, reinvented. That's something that I think is on our list to talk about, hopefully, if we don't run too foul of time. And Jamie points out a style guide or design standard is crucial for continuity and future branding of the city. That's a good point. Okay. And what is our next question here coming up? Because we have a few more to get through, and I want to make sure we get through those and then get to.
I think that's it for the generic polls.
Oh yeah, that is.
So it's the fun part now.
Okay. Okay, Melina, do you want to give an overview of this real quick, or?
Sure. So this is just an overview map of the neighborhood that we're talking about, which is Ward 1. You all recognize it. I put a few key points on here, like Bombardier, we have Skyway Plaza, South Peru Street. So again, this is just a slide to ID what we're talking about right now. And this is the meat of the presentation. So now we're going to talk about opportunities for change. I know a lot of people have been talking about Skyway Plaza, and that's our first conversation point. I think this is one of the biggest opportunities for change, and obviously we all agree on this. You know, this shopping plaza is great. It's, you know, it contains one of the city's only full service grocery store, Yando's Big M. There are other retail uses here. There's a pharmacy, there's a liquor store, there's office space, a hardware store, on and on and on. So it supports all the basic amenities within walking distance of a lot of different residential neighborhoods, but it's really underutilized and it's overbuilt. So this plaza was built to support the base population back in like the 80s and 90s, and that population just doesn't exist anymore. In addition to that, I think the design just doesn't fit our current needs. So this plaza was built around a giant parking lot, which is very underutilized. So there's a lot of opportunity here for infill development. I know we talked about mixed use development, which I think would fit great here. You know, we've seen over the years a lot of residential development happening over here in South Plattsburgh. There's new apartment complexes popping up all of the time. So I think that, you know, this retail component of this neighborhood is very, very important to be able to support that residential development. It's just what effort and what, you know, how can we focus this to support that residential development? So now, you know, it's going to be kind of a roundtable discussion with everybody. You know, maybe give us some ideas. What do you think would fit here? What's the highest and best use?
Yeah, and this would be a part if folks want to use the raise hand feature, or if you just want to type into chat, either way, if you're feeling shy. Lorraine, I'm going to go ahead and give you the microphone if you want to give us your thoughts on that.
I think something where this space could be kind of pulled together, where there might be little like pocket mini parks where people could, in the summertime, you know, sit at benches and maybe eat outdoors, that type of thing. Also, just the fact that the parking lot's in such bad shape, and it's kind of a helter-skelter. Looks like, you know, buildings were added here and there at different times. So if that could be sort of pulled together somehow into something that had a flow and that was really attractive from the street. I think a lot of summer visitors too that stay down at the state parks, at the beaches south of the city would come there, and there'd be, you know, a good reservoir of business to keep that place prosperous.
Absolutely, and to build upon that, I think with the shift to online shopping, any commercial development has to have a social component, right? So going shopping is something that you do leisurely at this point, typically, unless, you know, you have groceries to get, but usually going shopping physically is a leisure activity. So I agree, like some sort of community space mixed in with the commercial development would do very well here.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because people like to walk with their dogs.
Hmm.
And if you could sit and have a cup of coffee and a pastry or something and bring your dog along on a dog walk, it'd be a nice little rest, especially for the retired people. They would probably come, rest up for 20 minutes and then walk home. It would be, kind of a nice feature.
I think that this sort of thing, I think to your point, Lorraine, about maybe making it sort of a mix of some open space and shopping to make it more attractive. This sort of thing is ripe for sort of coming up with a sort of a master plan of the site and taking it to, to sit down with the property owners to say, look, this is how much more you could develop this site. But we've taken the liberty of designing it nicely the way we'd like to see it, with some parks and trails that go through it, interweaved. And think of the reinvestment you could get out of this site if you could double your square footage, and you would get a much nicer site that would attract folks.
Well, I think one
Not
thing to
trying to
consider
compete.
too. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, not trying to compete or take business away from downtown either, but something, different that would be kind of a niche for people.
One thing to consider for this site is how people have really gravitated towards sitting outside. In that public square sort of area where they rest, they can take their dog, they can have some picnic tables, some lounge areas for people can meet, and they can take their Burger King or their Dunkin' Donuts and sit outside in the common space. It would attract people, particularly retirees. They like to do that quite a bit, and I think there's something to really seize on here with all this asphalt.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the other issues with this plaza too is that it was built a long time ago when everything was car centric, and there is not a lot of good pedestrian connections to this. I mean, this whole plaza is surrounded by neighborhoods, but it feels like the residents don't really use it because there's not a good connection to it.
It's easier to get there by car.
I love roundabouts, but I think roundabouts are very scary to walk through as a pedestrian.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Good. Well, hey, Michael and Melina, I noticed that Jamie Canales had mentioned an idea of a project or down in Wilmington Beach.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I just asked him if he wanted to speak about that for a moment. Is that okay?
Sure thing.
Okay.
Let me just find Jamie here.
Yeah, I think I just unmuted him.
That's why he bumped up to the top, maybe.
Thank you, John. Yes, regarding this portion, we as a city have the opportunity to have two downtowns. We have the riverfront, or the riverfront and lakefront, and we also have the old base. It would be a great opportunity to have two downtowns, not taking away from our current downtown, however, being able to create two. And the reason why I used Wilmington as an example is I've lived in Wilmington, and they have three downtowns. They have a beachfront downtown, they have a riverfront downtown, and they have the actual downtown. And it's all historic. With the use of the actual downtown area, which is in between the river and the ocean there, they have this place that I just put in there called Mayfair Town Center. And it's they have a roundabout, it has groceries, it has restaurants, it has retail, and on the top it has residential. Some of them are 1 to 4 bedroom apartments. Some of them are 4-level townhomes with a parking garage underneath that goes in with a roundabout. And they also have a movie theater. So there's this, I'm looking at what we have in Ward 1, and I would just I see such a great hidden gem and potential with Skyway Plaza that's just being completely underutilized. And this is an area that, people come from all over the country to come and see because of, the Battle of 1812. And no matter how small the museum may be, people actually come to the museum. So I think, I personally believe that something with a mixed use for Skyway Plaza would be beneficial and extremely crucial to, future development for Plattsburgh.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Thank
Jonathan, thanks for mentioning that. I've actually been to that Mayfair Plaza, and I've gone to the movie theater there and gone shopping. But I think that leads us, we have a couple of quick preference polls. And as you started talking about what you might like to see there, I think it might be a good time to move into these.
Yeah, so we wanted to sort of get an idea of the sort of design character of what you think might be appropriate for this area, and how much do you think this would be appropriate?
And while we do these, I just want to let folks know that as we reach the end of this hour, we might have some people start to join us in preparation for the next hour. Feel free to stay tuned for as many of the sessions as you would like, or to come back for another one. And also know that if you have a comment we don't get to and you enter something in the chat, we will be saving all the chat and all of the poll results. So.
Okay, let's go ahead and end this and share the results. It looks like most folks feel that sort of a good design character that they would like to see. Some folks feel it's just okay, or it doesn't quite fit. If you don't feel it fits or it's only okay, feel free to, in the chat, let us know what about it doesn't give the top marks for you. And I believe we have another one. I'm going to go ahead and I believe I have to relaunch this poll, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and relaunch this one. And for this, what are your thoughts on this for the neighborhood shopping plaza? Do you think this fits? And again, if you don't feel it's a perfect fit, or you think it's not a good fit, feel free to add in the chat why you think, or what about it you think doesn't fit. Okay, I'm going to go ahead. Hopefully I didn't cut anybody off there. I saw it moving right at the last minute there. Share the results. A little bit more diversity here. Most folks seem to love it. Some folks seem it's okay. And at least one person doesn't think it's a good fit. Okay. Make sure Emily gets a chance to save that. Okay. And I'll stop sharing. We got about 10 minutes left. And we're going to move on now to another opportunities for change, looking at the Oval area. Malena, if you want to just give some of your thoughts on that.
Sure. So, I mean, we all know the Oval is the oldest part of the former Air Force Base. It's all historic. A lot of mixed use over here, predominantly residential, but obviously there are some office spaces. We have the rec center. The middle of the Oval is used for recreation purposes, but there is still some developable land, and maybe 2 empty buildings on the Oval. And we want to know what's the highest and best use for this area, and what other improvements could the city work on. And we have that great Terry Gordon bike path that runs the length of the lake, but we have 2 beaches that are underutilized and not a lot of access to them. So is that where the city should focus efforts, or should we refocus our zoning to allow for more mixed uses over here, keep it residential? Just kind of an open conversation about the highest and best use over here on the Oval.
Yeah, so I'd like to know folks' thoughts. What would you like to see in this area? There's not that much room for new development, but there is some redevelopment potential.
One thing that I would love the city to do over here is a food truck Friday. So there's a really cool old gazebo. I'm sure everybody knows it. It actually has power to it. So I can just imagine bands playing at the gazebo, people set up around, listening to music, eating out of food trucks. I just think there's a lot of opportunity over here for more social events, maybe more so than, infrastructure and development, more social events that could take place on the Oval.
Looks like Ira wanted to say something. I'm going to go ahead and give Ira a chance to speak up. What's on your mind?
There's 2 things. One was Sailor's Beach. That's going to be extremely difficult because of the overpass over the railroad tracks, and it's stairs, so you will not ever have handicap access there. The other beach that's a little further down, almost from Belfort Brewery, We need to get the cement barrier out of that road. We put the cement barrier on the road that goes down to the pier. There's a liability issue. Our insurance company, the city insurance company, notified us, and what that's doing is stopping anybody from going in there and parking in the parking lot. And I know dozens of people who used to pick up lunch and drive there and sit and enjoy the view of the lake and maybe walk around that don't do that anymore because we left a cement barrier that does not allow anybody access to that area. So that's the first one. The second one is, and I don't know what the zoning issues are associated with the historical district, and I don't know how far that historic district moves from the oval. But we have a set of buildings where the Clinton County Historic Museum is, but behind that is a whole series of buildings that the city owns, including the Champlain Valley Transportation Museum, which has been closed for 2 years. I walked through that building. That building is not recoverable. It would cost millions of dollars to rehab that. That is prime property on the path on the lake that could essentially open up for development, a multi-use kind of development that might be in there. That is a huge piece of property that I think some combination of housing, perhaps a local store, grocery store, small grocery store, something like that in that area would serve a lot of people. Of course, it's right across from the road from Skyway, so it's, it may not be able to compete in that way, but there may be other opportunities there for something.
Okay, thank you, Ira.
Yeah, I think that brings us to, we had some thoughts on housing and things you might like to see.
Yeah, we have another sort of visual preference. Wanted to know how well do you think that this type of development would fit in your neighborhood, wherever it is that you are in Ward 1. I'm going to go ahead and launch that. Hopefully you should be able to see that. And we've got a number of comments have come in while that's tallying. Renee says, I think affordable housing, particularly close to Skyway, would be great. There's several social services on the Oval, including one work source, and the retail employment opportunities at Skyway would lend themselves to walkable housing in that area. That's a good point. Okay, with the visual preference, and go ahead and end that and share the results. And it looks like kind of a mixed bag here. Half folks feel it's really nice along some of the main roads. Possibly a good fit in some parts of the city, but I'm not sure if that got cut off. But some folks feel it's totally out of place. It might be too much for this neighborhood. So thank you very much. I'll give Emily a moment to capture that, and then we're going to go on to the same one or same question, but for this photo. How well do you feel this would fit in your neighborhood? He notes that we should fix the beaches and waterfront and allow for mixed uses. It would be great to have more utilization of the old parade dock for an indoor rec center for kids. And Lorraine notes that renovations to the backside of these buildings in the Oval, walking on the paths or biking exposes the back of the dilapidated buildings. That's a good point. Okay, and the results on this image are in, and I'll share the results. This one got a little bit more favorable, really nice along some of the main roads, possibly a good fit in some parts of the city, and still some folks feel it might be a little too much or it doesn't really fit in with the neighborhood.
I can't believe somebody said no to a Ben & Jerry's. That's my
I always
comment.
tell people in a visual preference survey, don't look at the actual business. This is just like because it might be like some business and they're like, I hate that company.
Right.
And you're like, no, that's not what we're. But at Ben & Jerry's, nobody hates Ben & Jerry's, I don't think. Anyway, so I think with that, we have just a few minutes to wrap up. Thank you, everybody. I believe we just have a sort of a wrap up on what some of the next steps might be.
Yeah, so we just wanted to say, thank you everybody for participating tonight. like we said, the next session at 5 o'clock is for Ward 2, and then at 6 o'clock is Wards 3 and 4. You can stay on for those sessions, but you're gonna have to sit through the beginning part of the presentation again. Alternatively, we are going to post all of these. We're recording it, and we will post all of these on the city's website, on our social media, so you have access to them. And of course, please use the city info email address, or send us a comment online on our website. We're always taking feedback, but thank you for coming tonight. Our next steps are going to be to take all of this information we gathered and start drafting the comp plan. This is just the first of a couple different public work sessions. So once we have that comp plan drafted, we will then present that to the community again for feedback.
And I just wanted to add, for anybody who's still in, there will be, if you're familiar with the late night for the planet sessions, we will be talking a bit about comprehensive planning and visioning for the city. If you would like to join that next session, check out their Facebook page. They've started to post about it.
And it's probably going to be way more fun than this. These students have come up with like 5 or 6 different games to play with the audience. So it's probably going to be more fun than this. So definitely encourage you to attend that.
I believe we're doing that on March 9th.
Yes. And we'll share that on the city's website and on the city's Facebook page as well.
Okay.
And it's 5 o'clock.
Thank you, Melina. I guess we should, we've got 30 seconds to take a break and get more coffee before the next meeting. And with that, I'll be right back.
Thank you, everybody. Very nice.
Thank you.
Are we seeing new people hop on?
Yes, we are.
Perfect.
Yes, very nice.
I wasn't sure how this would work, if it would, be the same people that kind of stayed on, or if new people would hop on. Either way, we're getting some great feedback.
Nice.
I think we did pretty good with timing too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's already 5:02, so yeah, good.
Should I
Nice.
start my intro spiel that you guys have to listen to again while we're waiting for Michael?
I
Okay.
think so. I think so.
Okay, so I apologize to staff and our consultants that they have to hear me say all this again, but I just wanted to thank everybody for joining the conversation tonight. We have an hour to get through our presentation and our workshop. I just wanted to say that the city is very excited to embark on this large-scale planning effort. The city's current comprehensive plan was drafted way back in 1999. It was drafted in response to the Air Force Base closure. So we're here 20 years later to take a hard look and survey the existing conditions of the city and come up with a strategic plan to guide the city towards not just economic stability, but economic success. I emphasize economics here because obviously it's a huge driver behind the vitality of a place, but we all know that a place is more than just economics. It's the people and it's the social fabric that we weave as a community. So that's why we want to hear from you tonight, to make sure that this comprehensive plan is 1, comprehensive, and 2, it's a people's plan. You're who we're planning for. So the comprehensive plan is a blueprint, it's an instruction guide. It's not the government saying this is how the land should be developed and this is how the city should function. We can't make those decisions without hearing from you. So the plan is going to be a product based on existing conditions, public feedback, and then research and best practices. We want to try to capture, some of the best practices in other big popular cities that people love to live in and visit, like San Francisco or Portland or New York City. So, what we want to hear from you tonight is your feedback on existing conditions in Plattsburgh. So the first part of the presentation will basically be us walking through how you feel about existing conditions and how you interact with that environment. And that'll help us identify what makes Plattsburgh special and how we can build upon that and focus our efforts. Then we want to know what's missing, what can make it more vibrant, and not just vibrant temporarily, but how can the city be sustainable? And then we'll dive into your neighborhood specifically, which is Ward 2, that's what this session is, and some opportunities that we see for change. But you know what, maybe you'll tell us, hey, we like that our front yards are large and we have no sidewalks, but that's all information that's going to help guide how we develop our land use and zoning code to accommodate those needs and desires. So we're going to present a number of questions similar to those in the questionnaire that's been on the city's website and social media, and we're going to take a poll. So you'll be asked to answer the poll questions as they pop up on your screen, and then we'll have a discussion around them if necessary. Some of the questions are pretty simple. We might not have to do a really deep dive, but you'll have about 30 seconds or so to answer those questions. And then we'll dive into the real meat of the discussion at the end of the presentation when we start talking about those opportunities for change, which will be, focused in your ward. And, as I said before, if you don't live in this ward, it's okay. If you don't even live in the city, that's okay. We know that the city is not an island and it supports the greater North Country region. So we want to hear from you. Boring stuff, all the, Zoom etiquette rules apply. We decided to do this workshop as a meeting, not a webinar. So it was a little more intimate. We could see people's faces. We could hear you speak. So please, keep your mics muted and use the raise hand option if you'd like to speak. You can also use the chat session. We'll be monitoring that and bringing up your comments and questions as appropriate. And we want this to be fun. So, stick around to the end. It should be pretty interactive. Hopefully we can get some good information out of you and it'll be beneficial for everybody. So before we jump in, I just want to introduce our consultants. We have Saratoga Associates on the meeting tonight, and we also have Behan Planning. So if you guys would like to introduce yourselves.
Well, thanks, Milena. My name's Dan Shear. I'm with Saratoga Associates, and we're really looking forward to hearing about what you folks think about Ward 2, your input. This drives ultimately the vision for the city and your community. So we really want to document your input tonight. Our project manager for this effort is my friend Emily Gardner. Emily.
Hi, everybody. Dan always does a nice job of introducing me to everybody. Just wanted to say hello. Hope some of you we may have seen or interacted with before doing the waterfront planning or some of the DRI work, but I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say about the rest of the city. So thanks for being here tonight. John?
Good evening, everyone. John Behan here with Behan Planning and Design. So nice to be participating in this exciting project for the city. And Dan never introduces me nicely.
With good
Michael
reason.
Allen, but Michael Allen is a longtime associate of ours, and he'll be helping co-host the meeting. Michael.
Yep. Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Allen with Behan Planning. I will be the person who will be peppering you with poll questions. So, Elena, take it away.
Okay. So this first slide is just an overview of zoning in your neighborhood, which is Ward 2. Zoning controls what uses are allowed and the parameters around those uses. So how big a building can be, how dense a site can be, and other design standards. So in Ward 2, which is still South Plattsburgh, it's a mix of predominantly residential zoning and some industrial use along White Street. So this is just a basic map of Ward 2. I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page of what district we're talking about in the city. It's the area highlighted here in blue. A portion of SUNY Plattsburgh is in this ward, the area called the Flats, which Danielle spoke about earlier. A lot of Route 22, South Catherine Street, which is a business district along Route 22. And now we're going to jump into the polls, which is the fun part. Michael, our pollster, take it away.
Okay, we wanted to start things off by asking, what's your favorite thing about Plattsburgh? Why do you choose to live here? Is it the natural features, arts and culture, etc.? I'm going to go ahead and nope, I'm going to stop that. And I'm going to relaunch. There we go. There we go. That should give you the option now to vote on what what's your favorite thing about Plattsburgh and why do you choose to live here? I'm giving everyone about 30 seconds. And as with many of these poll questions, there might be more fine-tuned ideas that you want to share. We ask that you use the chat feature. If you have something in particular you want to call out. For example, a lot of people choose, I don't want to lead the witness here, a lot of people choose natural assets. We'd like to know, is there a particular natural feature of the area that is your favorite? And with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results and see how I led the witness there. And I tricked everybody into choosing the natural features because that seems to be the most popular result overall, followed by, let's see, rec and recreational opportunities in restaurants. So if there's a particular item you want to call out, please share it in chat and we can try and discuss it or come back to it later. So I'll go ahead and stop that. And for our next question, we wanted to ask, what types of development do you feel the city needs more of? Do you feel that it's commercial, office development, residential, etc.? I'm going to go ahead and relaunch this and give everyone about 30 seconds to vote on what they like. If you choose other, which is at the bottom, it means we'd like to hear, what are we missing? What's not on the list? You can share that idea with us in chat. Let us know what type of use do you think we're missing. And I'm going to go ahead and end this in just a few seconds. And it looks like residential housing is the #1 item, followed by mixed use, which is, a mix of residential and commercial. So this is something we've been hearing from a lot of people. Residential is a big need in the city, and this seems to reinforce it as well. And if there's anybody has any particular thoughts on that they would like to share, feel free to put them in chat.
I'd love to hear if anybody has any comments about what types of residential and what types of housing. Like, are you thinking single family housing? Are you thinking multifamily housing, affordable housing? So if anyone would like to expand on that response, that would be great. And are we taking responses by raising hands right now, or are we doing chat and coming back to it?
I think what we're trying to do is encourage folks to put it in chat because just to try and save some of the dialogue toward the second phase 2 of this, so we can make sure we stay on time, I think.
Okay.
And the next question, we wanted to get a feel for what people feel is the current physical condition of Plattsburgh. Would you characterize it as well-maintained, or does it need some love, or is it in poor condition, or worse? And so far we've gotten, as far as I can tell, no chat input from folks. So I will try and read those out as they come up, if anybody has anything in particular they want to add. And give a few more seconds for the poll. And it looks like, go ahead and end that and share the results. Most folks, 75% feel it needs some love or it's in poor condition. Good thing is nobody feels that it's worse than that. But this is actually a good result because it tells us that there's areas where we can try and address and improve. I'd be very interested to know from folks what in particular they think would make the biggest improvement in the city. What can the city address that as far as condition that would make the biggest improvement, do they feel?
Right. In addition to, coming up with a capital projects list, I think it's also important for the city to think about what relationships they can foster with the community for community engagement. I think there are a few downtown groups that help with cleanup. But it's interesting, to my knowledge, I don't think there's a downtown business association. And I think that that could be great for the city if there was some sort of group downtown that kind of helped at the community grassroots level.
Okay, keep my eye on the chat, see if anybody has any points. In case you don't know, you should be able to open up the chat dialogue at the bottom of your Zoom screen window. There should be a little speaking bubble for the chat dialogue. You can click that to open up the chat window. For our next question, we wanted to find out what's your favorite thing about your neighborhood, the area that you live in. Why do you choose to live there? I'm going to go ahead and launch this. There we go. Emily's testing the water here with a test message to make sure everyone can see it.
You may have gotten a little pop-up at the bottom of your screen now, so you can find where your chat window is in case anyone had any trouble with that.
I honestly think that the chat pop-ups should be bigger because I often miss them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So what's the favorite thing about your neighborhood? Is it location, housing availability, or other? Specifically, if you're selecting other, we'd like to know. Let us know what is the other thing that we haven't put on this list that you feel is important to your neighborhood. And go ahead and end this and share the results. And it looks like other is the number one. So now we definitely need, this is different than previous polls. We definitely need to know what the other is. If someone would cue us in, or if you want to raise your hand even, we can give you the option to speak. We're just trying to keep the poll questions moving along. But interesting is not what's on this poll, but what's not on it. Housing availability did not score with anybody. That kind of coincides with what we've heard from other folks, that housing is a big need. Also, it could be argued that housing availability isn't necessarily a reason why somebody would characterize a reason why somebody would want to live there. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this. And there's no chat windows are raised hands, so I think we can probably move on to the opposite question, is what do you feel is missing in your neighborhood? Is it job opportunities, transportation options, walkability? What's and you can, with this one, there's multiple choice. You can select as many as you like. Okay, we're getting a lot of diverse responses here. And I'll give this another second or two for folks to fill out. There's a lot of options here to choose from. And I'll go ahead and share the results. And we have, let's see. Number one is job opportunities, followed by cultural activities and affordable housing. Okay.
It does seem to tie into the fact that people's favorite thing was not housing availability for this neighborhood. Perhaps it needs to be more affordable.
Right.
Feel
Good
free
point.
to tell me if I'm right in the chat box. I don't want to speak for you.
And maybe we could just open up the mics if we want. We have a fairly small group. We could maybe open up the mics if things, but I think as soon as we get through some of these poll questions, we can get to that. Okay. And for some of the, well, how many, we want to get a feel for how often do you walk or bike to places around your neighborhood that are within walking or biking distance. There we go. I will launch that
And as we do that one, Erica commented that she feels housing is affordable, but there's not often housing available on the market. So maybe people really do like their neighborhood and they are just not moving.
Good point. Okay. And give folks another few seconds for this poll. Somebody notes with so much concern about job opportunity, the construction office buildings could really help with getting businesses to the area. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share the results of this. And so it's about the same from what we've heard in other polls, about 1 to 3 times a week you shop or eat downtown within walking or biking distance, sometimes 3 or more. So that's good. One of the things that we want to learn from folks is, are there shops or services in your neighborhood that you'd like to see in your neighborhood that might prompt you to walk more, or are there physical changes to the environment that could be made that would make you more likely to walk or bike to other areas around your neighborhood? If you have any thoughts on those items, that's something we'd definitely like to hear about. Go ahead and stop sharing this one. And I'll let Milena give a little overview of the 15-minute neighborhood here as we dive into the next question.
Sure. So the whole point of this poll is to track your behavior in hopes of developing what's called a 15-minute neighborhood concept in the city of Plattsburgh. In the city, it's more like a 5 or 7 minute neighborhood because of the size of our city. But basically, it means that each neighborhood should fulfill 6 social functions: living, working, supplying, caring, and learning, all within 5 to 7 minutes walking distance of your residence. Each function that I just named is pretty broad. It means different things to different people, but the underlying theme is convenience. So humans, especially Americans, we rely on and crave convenience. You know, we all know that our phones are tracking us, but it's kind of neat to look at the Google Maps to see what your radius is that you travel on a regular basis. It's interesting to see like how small our life bubble really is. I think most people stay within a 30-mile radius. And we kind of want to just build upon that concept of creating convenience within your bubble. You know, we're social creatures, and I get that, you know, we can't meet all of your needs inside of that bubble. So simultaneously, the city knows that we need to also focus on creating a strong social fabric downtown, you know, with cool public spaces and fostering small businesses and having events, et cetera. But the whole concept here is to create that convenience in your neighborhood.
Okay, I'll give this poll a few more seconds for folks to vote. And okay, go ahead and I'll share the results there. A little bit of a lag. And it looks like, if folks can see this, looks like health related, the doctor, pharmacy, office, that sort of item is the #1 item, followed by grocery store. So that's good. One of the things that we're interested in finding out from people is, are there, related to the walking and biking question, are there shops or services that they feel are lacking in their immediate neighborhood that they would like to see? What sort of services would you like to see closer to your home, if possible?
I think it's a little different than what we've seen in the past. We've seen a lot of people comment on grocery store, but I don't think I've noticed as much being health related. Interesting for this neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, the city is aware that there's a lack of health services in South Plattsburgh. I mean, this is an indication of that. And I think the city needs to maybe have conversations with CBPH to talk about that. I know they've opened up health clinics in other parts of the city and in the town of Plattsburgh. So maybe it's just a conversation with them and talk about their plans. You know, like we talked about earlier, there's a lot of residential that's popping up in South Plattsburgh. So I think, you know, there's a need for this health related services.
Okay. I don't see any comments sort of related to the question of, are there shops or services or physical improvements that you would like to see that might make you walk or bike more often? We wanted to ask, do you feel comfortable walking in your neighborhood? Is it a safety issue that is something? Could safety be improved that would be more likely to get you to walk or bike in the area, or is that not as much of an issue?
Sometimes it's an issue of lighting. Sometimes it's an issue of traffic is really fast, or there are a lot of trucks, or there just aren't crosswalks,
Mm-hmm.
Sidewalks.
Okay. Give everyone a few more seconds to vote here.
Or maybe you like it and you can feel like you can walk anytime.
Okay, and go ahead and share the results. And it's evenly split. This is a little bit different than previous polls, evenly split here between yes and no, and it depends. So I'd like to hear from the folks, particularly the folks who said no, they don't feel safe walking. I'd like to hear if you can share with us what your thoughts and why don't you feel safe. Either with your voice chat when we get to the discussion period, or if you want to type it into chat, that would be good as well. Okay. And related to the concept of do you feel that the city's in good shape? The city can really only maintain or take care of the public areas that it has jurisdiction over. The private sector really controls what happens on private land, but the city could introduce design standards which would make for minimum standards for design of the areas, the visible areas. And we can go ahead and ask, how important, or is it important for the city to establish?
And design standards on a level that's more than just visually. Coming up with design standards, I think, will allow the city to move away from traditional zoning and allow for more mixed uses in neighborhoods. As long as it meets a certain design standard, it could be allowed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll give folks a couple more seconds to vote here. And if you're voting no on this, I'd be interested to know if there are particular concerns you have, such as do you feel that design standards might be a disincentive? I'm going to go ahead and share this. And overwhelmingly, folks seem to feel that yes, they would be important for the city to establish design standards, but at least one person has said that they don't feel it is. I'd be interested to know if there's a particular reason, or do you have a particular concern about that? Rebecca points out that design standards could constrain architectural innovation. That's true, unless they're, depending on how they're done. And Erica, I think, responding to the safety question, is they get a bad vibe on the bike path. There are too many dark spots in some areas. So related to Emily, what you brought up about the lighting conditions, that could be something that we would want to take a look at. Okay, thank you. And thank you, Rebecca and Erica, for joining in the chat. We feel like no one was talking to us here. So,
are you out there?
Is there anybody out there? Okay. So now I think we're getting to the meat of this, where we can talk. And look at that. We got in. My target was to get in at 5:30 to get to this spot, and we got it. So now it's more of an open discussion. And I'll let you take it away, Malena.
Sure. Like Michael said, this is sort of the meat of the discussion, and it's also the fun part, because it's an open conversation about opportunities for change. The slide that's in front of you guys right now, this is just an overview of the neighborhood that we're talking about, which is Ward 2 in South Plattsburgh. As I said earlier, Ward 2 is predominantly the residential neighborhood that supported the former Air Force Base. There's also an elementary school here, a lot of senior housing, a small business district, and 3 to 4 underutilized or undeveloped public parks that the city owns. There's also a small section of SUNY Plattsburgh in this ward. So our first opportunity for change and point of discussion, this is the South Plattsburgh Park, also known as Fox Hill. It's very, very popular in the winter. It's always busy. As you can see, there's access to the river here and some undeveloped land that's, also city-owned, part of the park. So we just want to know from you, what would make this park better? How can it be better linked to your neighborhood? So please raise your hand to speak to this, or use the chat, whatever you're more comfortable with. I will say that we did look at this piece of property in this park in our LWRP, but I just wanted to open up the conversation again to get some more feedback.
Yeah, I think particularly we were interested in any additional programming. I think somebody had mentioned before, there's lots of good park space in areas around the city, but there isn't as much programming for them. I'd be interested to know what programming or activities you'd like to see at some of these parks.
It's interesting too, the photo on the bottom of the slide here is of South Platt Street that runs along the Fox Hill Park. And you can see there's actually no sidewalk on the park side of the road and no crosswalk over to the park from the other side of the road.
There's also a fence.
There's a fence. I mean, I think that's because that's where the sledding starts for children. So it's kind of to keep the kids and sleds out of the road.
Right.
But yes, it's fenced off as well.
Okay, I'm not seeing any. Oh, here we go. Rebecca points out this park's great when it's bustling with families, sledding, but seems creepy at other times.
I'm just taking a look at the aerial photo here and noticing it doesn't seem like there's much lighting within the park. Maybe that contributes to that creepy vibe. Lighting over the ball fields, I don't really notice that. I see there's a basketball court, but doesn't look like that is lit either. I don't know if that's well used. Something we've seen in some other communities is interest in, looking at their courts and deciding whether sometimes it's a tennis court that's kind of underutilized and maybe it becomes a pickleball court because pickleball seems to be gaining popularity. So if anybody has thoughts on, things that would be great but aren't here, let us know.
I've gone ahead and given everybody the ability to unmute themselves. So you don't have to raise your hand. If you want to add any comments, go ahead and unmute yourself and join in the conversation. We don't want you to feel left out here.
This park is interesting too, because there really is no place to dwell here. I don't think there's any seating. I don't think there are any benches. And because it's predominantly used in the winter for sledding, I think it might be kind of cool to focus this park on winter activities, which a lot of families are looking for in the wintertime around here. Things to do with their kids, even if it's outside. I mean, maybe we revamp the skating rink over here or just kind of focus this on one theme.
What's the grade change at this park? Because I know one issue we have when it comes to security and feeling safe at parks, sometimes it can feel secluded if there's a grade change and there's like areas where you can't readily see it from the street. And the other one is the amount of trees and lighting in association with that. I didn't know if those were concerns specifically for this park. What you said about this, Milena, being potentially a spot for a rink or a skating rink or something sounds like it might be a really nice idea.
Yeah, Rebecca points out that it's too dark and secluded down there, I think, in the gully. And Erica points out that live across the river and it seems it's only lit during
My phone charger
for the ball games. And the stairs at Fox Hill are still not replaced, and broken fencing at South Acres.
Another thing for the city to consider as you look at this is potentially putting in the potential for a camera or two for the police to have access to it.
Erica points out there's a skating rink off to the right of the ball fields. I assume by right we mean to the east.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Gotcha.
but pointing out that it's underutilized. So, and the equipment isn't safe for kids. So I think we've got a little overall examination to do of this park. Doesn't seem to give a vibe of safety or be too inviting to people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that, and for everyone on this call, it's always useful to get this sort of feedback so you can look at if there's a need for a recreational master plan or something along those lines, where you can look to see where some upgrades can occur.
Are there any particular activities, besides obviously sledding is a big one, any particular activities folks would like to see there? Someone points out there are woods there that would be a nice walking paths along the river, and would be nice to have a footbridge across the river to walking path.
There's a walking path on the opposite side of the river.
Okay.
And as you head east, beyond the trees, closer to the river, there's a cemetery. And probably 30 years ago, the church plowed all of the tops and all of the monuments down the river. So I don't know if there would be a lot of cleanup down there, because there's a lot of monuments buried in the trees along the riverbed.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
Okay.
Do we want to move on to the next one?
Sure.
Okay. So our next opportunity for change, this is a piece of property along the Saranac River that the DEC deeded to the city over near Waterhouse and Hartwell. Again, this was discussed in our LWRP, but I just wanted to open the conversation up again, get some more feedback. So, you know, the conversation is around, should this be a passive park space with access to the river only? Should the city sell some of the property for development? You know, maybe do some programming over here. Just what are your thoughts?
I do know, I think, Melena, in previous discussions, that at least some of this, like sort of the left half of this park, is still in the floodplain, correct?
I believe so.
Yeah, so we'd be a little bit limited in what we could build there, but there could still be some improvements and activities and other enhancements that the city could strive for.
Yeah, it looks like in comparison to, you know, where we just were, I mean, this is a little bit more secluded of a space, but it does seem to be a little more open, that you have some sight lines to the water. So I see a comment coming in from Rebecca that, you know, maybe a gazebo and some nice picnic areas or sitting areas would work well here.
That's actually a really neat potential use of that property, because, you know, a lot of these areas that are in floodplains and otherwise undevelopable are perfect for developing some sort of active or passive space.
And I don't know how fast the river flows here, but it could be an opportunity for portage for canoes, kayaks, just river access in general. It's interesting how this city, you know, traverses, or the river traverses the entire city, but there's not a lot of access to it.
Well, that's a really good point, because one thing we've looked at, and Emily on some of her projects, it's always, and Michael as well, it's really a challenge to find a number of points for access and egress from the river. And I think to increase recreation of that type on the river, you need more points of access. So I think this is a perfect example.
One person's asking for some clarification on where this is. They're not familiar with this parcel of land. I don't know if you want to pop out to a Google view or describe it a little bit.
Emily, do you want to pop into Google? I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
I just so happened to have Google Maps open.
I knew you did. That's why I asked. I knew you did.
That's what she does.
One step ahead.
So let me actually hit share. That would be helpful. We're talking about right here. If you can see this little green loop was actually that street. Might be a little slow to modify this to satellite view for you. Sorry, should not have chosen that option. Let's go back to regular. A little sluggish, but basically, if you were to come down South Platt Street, continue onto Hartwell, you can drive straight into this park entrance. It might look like a driveway to you if you don't know it's here. we did talk about this when talking about the waterfront revitalization plan, and there were some comments like, "Oh, I didn't know that was a park."
Yeah.
Surprise, it's a park.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Yeah, and
wanted
I
to-
think a couple of folks have pointed out be a good place to launch tubes or other small, flotation, because I think the grade change there isn't too steep down to the water.
And there is, I can pop back. It does relate to our next discussion area too. So maybe I'll pop back and we can talk about them together.
Okay.
Because actually, where you have that loop there, it's going to make it a lot easier for offloading, kayaks, those sorts of things. You got pretty good access point there. I don't know how much of a drop it is, but I understand that if it's part of the floodplain, it can't be that much of a drop.
So this might help with context for people on this slide here. You can, on the image on the left, you can see SUNY Plattsburgh in the background. The next point we were talking about is inside the bend of the river here, where you see all the trees. But the park we were just on is just at the bottom of the screen here. You can see the bit of that loop that we saw in the previous photo.
So this is also city-owned property that's undeveloped and could potentially be parkland. I like the comment about tubing. I think it would be really cool to, put a tube in here, go around the bend, take your time, either get out here or get out at Fox Hill. Again, I don't know the speed of the river, how deep it is, how rough it is, but it's a cool concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, with this property at the sort of Oxbow Bend in the river, this is also a little bit constrained by flooding and wetness. So we would be, limited in what could be built there, but there could certainly be enhancements or other. I'm sure someone's using the property for something right now, whether they should be or not. But there's still the opportunity for some enhancements or parks or trails or other connections to the water.
Absolutely. And people are always asking for more dog parks. And I think this could be a great opportunity for maybe a park or maybe even just trails to go and walk your dog. There's really not a lot of those opportunities within the city. So having wooded trails to walk your dog, I think would be great. Or just walk yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think we do have a poll also related to these slides. Let me just get some, or are we on the next one? Oh, sorry, I'm ahead of myself.
You are ahead of us. Always one step ahead.
I know. I don't know if we noted Michaela's comment agreeing that college students would definitely utilize water access just as much, if not more so, than community members. I can definitely see some college students taking advantage of an opportunity to go tubing down the river.
Mm-hmm.
Heck yeah.
I think one thing really to consider, and I know we've talked about it, and I think it'd be a real benefit to many communities, this one in particular, is tying in a trails network, just make it a little more coherent. I mean, you have a lot of folks from the school that, that are transients, but having them aware of a coherent trails network within the city, whether it's, it's a nature trail sort of thing through parkland, areas like this, it's a great use of that property.
Yep, but I think as I think Erica mentioned before that you do have Saranac River Trail on the west side of the river here. It just would be nice to maybe continue that idea along the east bank as well.
True.
All right. Okay, so moving away from parks now, this next opportunity for change, this is an image of the dense neighborhood that grew in support of the former Air Force Base. There's an elementary school here, as I said earlier, a handful of convenience type stores, Richard's Grocery that everybody knows and loves. And the whole point of this slide is to spark the conversation around, do people want more mom and pop type convenience stores or restaurants in their neighborhood that is predominantly residential and zoned for residential? Do they want that more mixed use to have that convenience, to be able to walk 5 minutes to the store and grab your milk and eggs, or are you okay with getting in your car and driving there? So we just wanted to, have that conversation around mixed use in the neighborhoods. And also, I think this image is great because it kind of shows the disconnect to that Skyway Plaza that we were talking about in Ward 1, and how these neighborhoods all surround Skyway Plaza, but there's only one north and south connection to get over there. So I think the pedestrian connection also is not that great. I mean, I think there are, well, maybe there are sidewalks all the way there, but it does feel disconnected from the retail opportunities in this neighborhood. And, you know, what are some opportunities to better connect the residential neighborhoods to the retail, and then also maybe adding some more commercial within the neighborhoods if people are open to that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're looking for is the idea of identifying little, I guess, neighborhood nodes, which would be, you know, small pockets in different neighborhoods where it might be appropriate to change the zoning to allow for a little neighborhood store. You know, no big chains or anything, but a small neighborhood store that could take care of local needs or, you know, shops and services, and trying to identify what parts of the city make the most sense for those, working toward the sort of 15-minute neighborhood concept.
People are not as chatty in this ward.
No,
They really like where they live, and they don't want
I got through the polling the second. Oh wait, Rebecca would like to point out traffic can get really congested around the store on Johnson, which is at the center of our screen right here in this. I don't think the streets could handle increased traffic. So I guess, are you saying, Rebecca, that that store itself generates a lot of activity and traffic? It shows that maybe that there's a need for it.
Yep.
Okay. I also noted on one of the other side streets, more to the north-south street to the west of this, that leads up to the bridge. I'm blanking on the name right now. There's a little market convenience store along there. I wasn't sure if that might be also a potential opportunity for one of these sort of little neighborhood nodes.
Lajoie's Meat Market on 22.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Just as a friendly observation, seems like it's in kind of a little bit of an enclave, kind of nice and out of the way, not cut up by main drags too much. I wonder what the opportunities are here for, you know, home ownership. Are there housing rehab opportunities here? What's your sense that live there or near there about the future of the neighborhood? And there's something that it might need?
Erica points out that they walk to the co-op, but they worry that smaller stores might be cost prohibitive to many families.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone feel that there's any particular influence from SUNY Plattsburgh on this neighborhood, or any relationship to it, since it is so close, but it's across the river?
Yeah.
And if you don't want to take the time to type, remember, feel free to actually.
Yeah,
chat.
if I did it right, everyone should have the ability to unmute themselves. So.
Mm-hmm.
Student says no. I'm glad we have a student on.
Yay.
As a student, I'd say no. Okay, thank you, Mia. And Erica seems to echo that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it?
Well, moving on to what sort of commercial areas might fit in the neighborhood. One of the things we wanted to ask is, you know, if you were to have a commercial store in the area, such as, we're using Ben & Jerry's in this example because everybody likes Ben & Jerry's, but we don't mean it literally. If you were to have one of these two, which one might you like? I'm going to go ahead and launch this. Hopefully you should have the option to choose.
We're just thinking about the style of commercial development, if you think this is appropriate for your neighborhood.
So far, it's evenly split. We got to give folks a little bit more time, but only a few people have voted, so give folks a few more seconds until the option that I want to win wins. Because that's how this works. Wait. Oh no, something happened to the poll. It broke. We can't finish it. No. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead
Stop
and
the vote.
share the results. The more urban Ben and Jerry's on the left seems to get a slight favorability over the more suburban one on the right, which is tied with I want something like this and I don't want something like this. So it's a little bit helpful, but okay, that's surprising. I was guessing that people were going to want the one on the right, but okay.
Me too.
That's good. Shows you. And then I think we have a similar one. No,
That's it.
that was it. Okay. Well, then we can sort of give an overview of what some of the next steps are going forward. And then that'll give us a few minutes to have any last observations that folks have and things that they would like to share before we wrap up.
Sure. So I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight and participating. We're going to keep posting updates on our website and our social media, but the next steps are taking all of this information that we're gathering right now from the public and actually drafting the comp plan. So we'll, take a few months to do that, put the plan together, and then we'll present that to the community again. So there will be another opportunity for public comment once we present that plan to you. And also ongoing, keep using that city info email, send us your comments, send us your feedback, make comments on the city's Facebook page, just, reach out to us. We're gathering all that info and we are going to use it.
And I also just want to offer a little plug for anybody who wants to keep participating virtually. There will be a late night for the planet session coming up on March 9th. If you're interested in participating, we'll be talking about the comp plan, playing some games, so it might be a little more fun. But again, that'll be on March 9th, and check out the Facebook page for that information.
Yep, the city will share that information as well on their website and Facebook page, as Emily said.
Yeah, and I think if you didn't already mention it, wanted to point out to folks that on the city homepage regarding this effort, there's a comment form, correct? That people can submit comments, right?
So next up at 6 o'clock in 9 minutes, we're going to dive into wards 3 and 4, and you're more than welcome to stay on the Zoom call. You're going to have to sit through that whole beginning of the presentation and do all those polls again. But you're more than welcome to sit through that and talk through some opportunities for change for ward 3 and 4. Alternatively, if you don't want to sit through all that again, I forgot to mention that we are recording all of these sessions and we're going to post them on the city's website. So you can use the magic of fast forward to get to the end of the presentation if you want to.
Okay. Before we wrap up, do folks have any general comments, questions, concerns? I'm sure there's certainly topics that we didn't cover in this short period, but what would you like to make sure we include or address in the comp plan going forward?
Can we get rid of the one-way street on St. John was asked. So I guess we'll take a look at what's happening there. Is there a reason in particular? Sometimes one-ways can be like speeding traffic, or sometimes it's just super inconvenient. I'm just wondering if there's any additional insight as to why.
It's unnecessary.
Barely any too low traffic. Okay.
Okay.
Interesting.
It was St. John.
Yep.
Yes. And so that street happens to be one block south of Hartwell that we talked about, kind of goes right into that park that nobody knew was a park.
I think the reason it was there originally is because the school was now no longer a school.
Okay.
Okay.
I could do it. And somebody, I guess Rebecca suggesting Hartwell also.
Yep. Yeah, sometimes you get things that are left over that don't necessarily make sense anymore.
Mm-hmm. Time may have passed.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, we have about 5 minutes until our next session.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. It was
Yes,
nice.
thank you, everybody.
Yeah, it was great to have everyone
Thank
on.
you, Rebecca and Erica and Mia, and Michaela, if I pronounced that correctly.
I am going to take a quick break and I'll be
Okay. Melina, while we have a little downtime, do you feel that worked better or not as well when we kind of jumped through the poll questions and saved comments till later? Or do you think we should open it up to comments as we do the polling? Which do you feel worked better? We got through the polling and much faster the second way, but I'm just not sure if it was just too abrupt.
Yeah, I don't think we got as much feedback. I think people maybe felt a little rushed and didn't feel like they had time to comment. But this next session is a combined Ward 3 and 4. So we have a lot more opportunities for change to go through. So maybe for this session, we do what we just did, kind of speed through the polls.
Let's give it a shot. Okay.
I think it's also might just depend on how many participants we get. I think we had quite a few more on the first one.
Yep.
We've got a lot of folks in the background on staff side.
I keep wondering if that Ben and Jerry's question is tripping people up and they're only picturing a Ben and Jerry's.
Good. We want a Ben and Jerry's in Plattsburgh. I think it was interesting too to see the different results from the same poll questions from ward to ward.
Seeing the same results or the different results?
Different.
Yeah, I thought you said same. I was like, I was surprised they were very different.
Yeah, I think the questionnaire has been great. We've gotten a lot of feedback, but this is kind of cool to basically be doing the questionnaire live to kind of get a little bit more information because you know where these people live and what their concerns are based on where, you know. I'm hoping wards 3 and 4 are pretty popular. I see some people popping on.
We're still at 14 participants.
Because the next group's here.
Are people muted upon entry to the work session? Okay. Just a couple more minutes and we'll jump in.
That last discussion was, what was the traffic backup they were talking about? Milena, do you recall?
Yeah, at Richard's Grocery, it is pretty popular because of the expired craft beer that they sell for really cheap. So on weekends, it's pretty busy on that street.
Excuse me. Could you give me the address for that again?
Yeah, seriously, write it down. It's great. Yeah, I mean, those streets are pretty narrow. There's not a lot of parking. So I think, it does feel like it gets a little bit congested there on the weekends.
Yeah. Looks pretty tight. And the whole housing stock is in pretty reasonable shape over there.
Yeah, pretty reasonable. Yep.
It's a little older, but it's
Yeah.
definitely in good shape. And it's definitely a popular neighborhood too. I mean,
That's nice.
It's starter family, smaller homes, but it's popular.
Yeah, the only thing I saw on it, if you looked at it from like the Google map view, is like it'd be nice if they had access to, right in that neighborhood, the recreational opportunities right outside their door, for a dog walk, take their kids out, something like that. Right. In that
Most of them
neighborhood.
just walk over to the school and use the playground after hours and on the weekends.
Yeah, that's a great thing to do when you have that opportunity.
I grew up in that neighborhood.
Oh, okay.
Voice of experience. Good to know.
Okay, so we're at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Probably jump in because we've combined both wards 3 and 4 for this presentation because they're very similar. They're both, predominantly residential neighborhoods that are on the north and south side of the Route 3 commercial corridor. So we thought this could be one cohesive conversation about these two wards. So I'm Milena Tamer. I'm the planner for the city of Plattsburgh. And I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Like I said, we only have about an hour. I mean, this one can run a little bit later, but I'm sure consultants don't want to be eating dinner at 8 o'clock. So but we'll try to keep it to an hour. I just want to say the city is very excited to embark on this large scale planning effort to help guide development. The city's current comprehensive plan was drafted way back in 1999 in response to the Air Force Base closing. So we're 20 years later, and we're taking a hard look and surveying the existing conditions of the city and coming up with a plan to guide the city towards economic stability. And I emphasize economics here because obviously that's the huge driver behind the vitality of a place. But we know that a place is more than just economics, right? It's the people and it's the social fabric that we weave as a community. So that's why we're here tonight. We're here to hear from you as the people of Plattsburgh. We want to make sure that this plan is both comprehensive and it's a people's plan because like I said, you're who we're planning for. So, as you know, a comprehensive plan is a blueprint and it's an instruction guide. And we can't make the decisions without hearing from you first. We can't draft that plan without hearing from you because you're who we're planning for. So the final product that we're going to be presenting is a plan based on, like I said, existing conditions, public feedback, and then research and best practices. Some things to think about are, what makes San Francisco or London such cool places that people want to live and visit? And how can we capture some of that here? So the first part of the presentation, we're going to go through and ask you some questions about the existing conditions of the city and how you interact with that environment. And this will help us identify what makes Plattsburgh special and how we can build upon that and focus our efforts. Next, we want to know what's missing. What can make it more vibrant and not just vibrant temporarily, but how can the city be sustainable? And then we'll dive into your neighborhood, which is wards 3 and 4, and we'll talk about some opportunities we see for change. I say for change, but at the same time, you could say, hey, no way, like we like our neighborhood as is, we like the big lawns, we like the sidewalks, and that feedback is exactly what we're looking for, because that'll help guide us when we're developing our zoning codes, which is the next step after this comprehensive plan. So we know this zoning code and the comp plan, they're not going to solve all the city's problems, but they can at least help us guide us in the right direction. And the bottom line is it's been a really long time since we've looked at this. So now's the time. So the way this presentation will function is we're going to ask a couple of questions. A poll will pop up on your screen. You'll have about 30 seconds to answer that poll. And then we'll have a conversation around that, the poll results. And then the real meat of the conversation is going to be at the end of the presentation, so stick around. And that's going to be around the opportunities for change in your ward. So we'll present a few images and then we'll have just sort of an open roundtable discussion. And you can either use your, raise hand option to speak, or you can use the chat, whatever you're more comfortable with. Of course, all the, Zoom etiquette rules apply tonight. Keep muted until you're ready to speak. Try to limit it to about 3 minutes so everybody has a chance to speak. But lastly, we want this to be fun. So please, stay till the end. We'll have free virtual pizza. I said that in the first one and I don't know how well it went over, but I said it again. There's no pizza. So we wish we could do this in person, but unfortunately, due to the circumstances, we're doing it via Zoom. But again, like I said, we want this to be fun, interactive, and we'll jump right in. So as I said, I'm from the city of Plattsburgh. We also have our consultants on the call tonight. We have Saratoga Associates and Behan Planning, and they'll introduce themselves.
Well, thanks, Milena. My name's Dan Shear. I'm with Saratoga Associates. We've been working with the city of Plattsburgh for the last few years on projects similar to this, and so we really appreciate being here. I think what we really want to do is get your input on what you like and what you would like to see in the future for wards 3 and 4. And with that, I'll hand it over to the project's project manager, my friend Emily Gardner.
Hi, everybody. I'm Emily. You might be familiar with me and Dan from the waterfront planning and also from some of the downtown projects. But we're really looking forward to hearing what you have to say about the rest of the city tonight. So thanks for being here. And I will just hand it quickly to John.
Hi, good evening, everyone. John Behan here with Behan Planning Design. So happy to be helping out on making this just a really great vision for the city's future. And thank you for having us as part of your team. Michael Allen will be helping co-host. He's a long member of our organization. And Michael?
Good evening, everyone. Michael Allen here from Behan Planning. I will be peppering you all with poll questions, and I hope you're not shy. Feel free to speak up and use the chat feature. So with that, I'll give it back to Milena.
Okay. So the first slide we're looking at, this is just an overview of zoning in your neighborhood. Zoning controls what uses are allowed and the parameters around those uses. So how big a building can be, how dense a site can be, and other design standards. So I just wanted to give like an overview feel of what's allowed right now in your ward. So Ward 3 and Ward 4, which is, we call West Plattsburgh. It's a mix of residential and general business along the Route 3 corridor, which kind of splits Ward 3 and 4. I think the mix of uses is great in these two wards, but like the rest of the city, I think it probably could be a little bit more flexible to allow for more mixed uses. And I just wanted to put that out there to kind of frame the conversation. Alrighty, Ward 2, same thing I just talked about, mostly residential and general business around Route 3 or Cornelia Street. As I said in the beginning, we combined these two wards into one conversation, one presentation, because they're very similar in nature as far as being residential neighborhoods that kind of border that Route 3 commercial corridor. So now we're going to jump right into the polls, and Michael will take over from here and be your pollster.
Just to start out, we wanted to get everybody's input on, what's your favorite thing about Plattsburgh and why you choose to live here. Wanted to do a quick poll on that and see, what is it? Is it the natural assets that draw you to the area, the recreational opportunities, etc.? Give everyone about 30 seconds to vote on this. And, based on the results, we may have some questions for all of you as far as in specific. For example, which particular natural assets do you find that are the biggest draw to the area? What recreational opportunities are the draw, etc.? Give everyone a few more seconds to finish voting here. I think we have a couple of people haven't voted yet. And you should have the ability to raise your hand or unmute yourself if you would like to elaborate on any of those. I'm going to go ahead and share the results. And here we go. So natural assets, again, this is kind of mirroring what we've heard in some of the other ward conversations. Natural assets are one of the predominant draws, as well as recreational opportunities in the schools and colleges. Hopefully we have a couple of college students here with us tonight. That might give us a little bit of their insight. I'd like to know which particular assets or rec opportunities are the draw in this particular case. Feel free to use the chat, or if you are not shy, it would give people the opportunity to speak if you like. And give folks a moment for that. And then in the meantime, while you're thinking about that, we can move on to the next question, which is, what type of development do you feel that the city needs more of? Is it commercial and office, residential, etc.? Oh, somebody, Marie points out the beach is one of the main natural draws. So what type of development do you feel the city needs more of? Commercial, office, residential, industrial, mixed use? And if you're saying other here, we'd be very interested to know what did we miss? What's not on the list that we should have added? Feel free to type that into the chat or speak up. Let us know what your thoughts are. Give folks a few more seconds to finish up. And
Marie, I'm guessing your reference to the beach was to City Beach. I'm just going to assume there are a couple of smaller ones, but I just want to make sure that was correct. And noticing that Jacqueline is commenting, we need some accommodations downtown.
Accommodations. I assume, maybe clarify, I assume that like hotel type accommodations.
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and share the results of this latest one here. It seems a majority of folks would like to see some more mixed use, and then other. And as I said, let us know, what is the other? What did we miss? What should have been on that list that we didn't? Yes, the city beach. My family is there often during the summer, notes Marie. And Doug notes commercial, office, residential housing, industrial, and all of the above selection is something we should have added. So that's a good point. All of the above would have been helpful. Okay. And then the next question we have is just relates to the physical condition of the city. How would you characterize the current physical condition of Plattsburgh? Do you feel it's well maintained, or it needs some love, or is it in poor condition, or is it worse? Let us know what your thoughts are on this one. I don't see any raised hands. Nobody's unmuted. So Jackie notes some places are well maintained, but others are certainly not. It's mixed. So I'm going to go ahead and share the results of this. And it looks like majority of folks feel it needs some love, followed by poor condition. And this is good. This tells us that there's something that we need to address. That's what comp plans are for. We just need to know what do you think in particular would make the biggest difference? Is if the city could address one or two things as a priority, what do folks feel would be what would make the biggest impact, I guess, would be something we'd like to know. If you have any thoughts on that. Shannon points out a lot of the multi-unit housing is in poor condition, particularly the student housing would benefit from higher standards for maintenance. So thank you, Shannon. And Donna points out the exterior condition is fairly well maintained, but the interiors need improvements. I don't know if you're talking about exterior of all buildings or exterior of one in particular. Just want to make sure we clarify that for the record. And Jackie points out, what about trees lining the streets? Oh, Donna clarifies most buildings. So the exterior of most buildings is in fairly well maintained, but the interiors need work. Thank you for that clarification. Okay. Next question is, what's your favorite thing about your neighborhood? Is it the location, the availability of housing, accessibility to local shops and services? And go ahead and share this. Give folks about 30 seconds or so to make a choice. I will give you a hint. There's only one correct answer. If you get it wrong, you won't be able to participate in any more polling tonight, I'm afraid.
And realizing we do have, wards 3 and 4. So if there's anything in particular, particularly if you're choosing other, that you would like to, comment on as being why, what your favorite thing is, we'd love to know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to use my Johnny Carson method of predicting, and I believe there will be people who say other. Let's see. Let's go ahead and see what the results are. I have no idea what they are. Share the results. And, oh, yep. So what is your favorite thing about your neighborhood? Safety and other rank up there as the two top. We'd really like to know from folks. Give us some more thoughts. What's the other? It's not all of the above, maybe. I'm wondering if Doug is thinking we should do all of the above for that one too. It's good to know that safety is high up there. Notably, housing availability isn't highly ranked, possibly because either that's an issue or because people are already living there, so they don't need to have housing available. I'm not sure which. But yes, definitely let us know what the other item is and which ward you're in. So, and conversely, what do you feel is sort of missing in your neighborhood? What would you like to see more of in your neighborhood? I'm going to go ahead. I'm just checking to make sure that there's no new comments or raised hands. Continue on with this. And as Milena mentioned, we're kind of jumping through these pretty quickly, but we're going to, once we get through these, we'll kind of open it up to a more of an open chat. And at that point, we'll require people to talk because otherwise we feel very lonely here. And we're getting some feedback now. Donna points out comfortable housing distances and family-friendly feel. I live in Ward 4. Thank you, Donna, for clarifying which ward.
So liking kind of the existing density there, I would say that sounds like.
Yep. And Doug points out 2-plex, 4-plex. Jackie notes bike lanes throughout the city would be terrific with an exclamation point. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share the results of what's missing in your neighborhood. And we will share those. And recreational resources ranks the highest after transportation options. So these are two areas where we need to address. And this will be talking points as we get into this phase 2 of this meeting. Checking the time here. We're good on time. So recreational resources. One of the things we'd like to hear from people is what in particular, what types of, is it physical improvements or activities, and what transportation improvements we could make. Thank you.
Michael, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Emily.
I was going to say, I do find it interesting that recreational resources was the most popular because within these two wards, we have both Penfield Park and SUNY Plattsburgh with part of the Saranac River Trail. So I would love to know what people think is missing.
I would like to know, at the risk of getting a little bit off script, and Michael knows this is the bane of his existence, but also it brings, I think, I'd like maybe let's have a little time to have some verbal chat from a few of the folks just to expand a little bit. I think this might help in the later discussions too, to get people talking a little bit right now, because this leads to, some of the goals of the plan. I'd like to, maybe we can open up some mics and ask people to jump in a little bit about what in particular they think might be missing. I'd like to talk about the idea of what was that, bike trails? What was that chat that we heard?
People should have the ability to unmute themselves. So
okay. Maybe Jackie, I could ask Jackie if she could, and if she's okay with that, maybe she would unmute and just give us a little bit
No.
about what you're thinking. Hey, thanks, Jackie. Hi.
Hi. So bike is the way I prefer. That's my preferred form of transportation. And I see so the bike, the Brinkerhoff Street and Court Street particularly, that are ridiculous 2-lane traffic would be easily adapted to a bike lane and 1 lane of traffic. You don't need 2 lanes of traffic on that, on those roads. And the other thing is, we live on Trafalgar behind the hospital. And you take your life in your hands riding down Prospect Street because there's no real shoulder, and I don't think people in Plattsburgh are necessarily as conscious of or interested in as being attentive to the cyclists. So we've raised 3 children here, and we would have loved to have had them being able to bike safely around the neighborhood. In the neighborhood they can, but once you get outside the neighborhood, it's not a safe environment for children to bike.
Sorry, Jackie, which you had mentioned is that particular street with no shoulder. Which one was that again?
Prospect.
Okay.
There's it's hard to bike there, and the bike and the grates and the road go the wrong direction. So if you get caught in a grate, you break your bike. You really get hurt. I've been hurt, not by the grates, but I know what it feels like.
Jackie, if there weren't changes to making certain roads one way, do you think like sharrows or arrows identifying that this is a shared lane with bicycles would help at all?
That would be a step in the right direction. We've seen that on Route 9 going north toward the beach. And that road they actually made there's a remarkably wide bike lane, which is terrific. But to get there, and even on Route 9, it's pretty good. But getting from our neighborhood to there, it's pretty challenging.
Yeah, I think that the challenge we often get, because we get that request a lot in a lot of our communities, particularly in upstate New York, and sometimes you have limitations what you can do with respect to the road width, the footprint of the road, and what you can do with respect to what's going to be 1 lane or 2 lane. So it's kind of a blend of what you come up with some of the road infrastructure as to what the ultimate result is. But it's always good to hear about cycling and the interest in it. We know there's regional interest in it, but particularly in the city, it's good to know that you want cyclable neighborhoods.
And I mean, I work at the college, and I know I work with international students, and they like to bike. But they need to have a safe way to get from point A to point B, and so many of them are coming along that Brinkerhoff Court Street route. If those were more bike friendly, I think that you'd see more people biking.
Thank you, Jackie.
No, that's good stuff. Thank you.
I noticed Shannon. It looks like might be.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Shannon.
I'm a resident of Ward 4, and I guess just to kind of expand on what Jackie's saying, we do have Penfield Park here within our particular ward, which is great, but it's not necessarily walkable for most of the year, since during the winter, a lot of the sidewalks, there's such close proximity to most of the buildings, since this is such old development, that the sidewalks kind of become ice troughs as the weather changes. So that makes it challenging in the winter months to get to those parks unless you drive, which I sometimes kind of, you want to be able to walk to the park and enjoy it. So I think that's one of the big issues with just accessing the recreational opportunities here. And there's not really a lot to do in that park in the winter. So that's kind of another aspect of it. And it's really geared a lot towards, there's a beautiful community garden over there, which is wonderful to walk through in the summer. And there's the dog park could really use, I think, a little TLC. It's kind of just at this point, just a gated area. It's not really very welcoming. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in Penfield Park to do some renovations. Some of the structures over there are very dated. I remember them from when I was a kid, which was a very long time ago. So I think it would be nice to see maybe some updated play structures, some functional swings. There's been some stuff added, but it's just not, in general, a lot of it is just, like I said, just very dated, and it's not it's not really as much of a destination park as it was when I was a kid. But that being said, the other thing that I feel is kind of missing in Ward 4, I also voted for safety and security because our lighting is very poor. And a large majority, I live in what's called the French Quarter. So it's the Champlain, Lafayette, Montcalm area. And it's so dark here at night. So I am able to walk to work, which is great. But in the winter, when it's dark, I definitely don't feel comfortable walking down the street just because, you know, the sidewalks are very uneven. They can be very narrow, and it's a pretty challenging area once the sun goes down in order to navigate safely.
Okay, thank you, Shannon. Yeah, I'm wondering if, and this is something we've heard in other groups, that, you know, there's not much to do in the parks in the winter. Is that what is prompting people to say that there needs to be more sort of recreational opportunities, or is there a lack of activities in the summer, I guess, is a follow-up question I would have.
I do see a comment as well that someone's saying the skate park needs to be updated, and that they've been hearing that.
Yeah, I think this is back to the point where the city needs to look at doing a recreation master plan. I think we have a lot of parks and we have a lot of opportunity, but a lot of it is outdated and it doesn't attract people like it used to. Like she said, I think it's not the amenities that people are looking for today.
Okay. Jackie points out the loss of a recreational coordinator in the city has been, a loss for those of us who participated in those activities with our families. Julie points out the dog park is dumpy and not really a nice place to go. And Marie points out they agree the lighting is lacking. They don't feel safe walking at night in many of the streets, and the sidewalks need TLC and need to be throughout the city. Okay. Thank you. See, thank you, John, for doing that. You helped prompt people out of their shells and come out and speak a little bit. That's what we needed. Okay. I was looking to see if there's any other comments or folks looking to speak, and we can keep moving on with some more questions to prompt stuff. I want to get to the opportunities point because we have a number of areas specific in the neighborhood. The next question is, how many times a week do you walk or bike to local areas, in your immediate neighborhood? And I'll get an idea from folks. I think Jackie is going to win this contest, but we'll see. It's not a contest. And while you guys are doing that, note Donna points out the sidewalks need to be replaced and widened, and the handrail along Boynton between the park and Beekman needs to be replaced as well. Thank you, Donna. I'll give folks a few more seconds to make their choices here. And I'm going to go ahead and share this poll. And we have 1 to 3 is the most likely. Some folks just don't walk at all, and sometimes more than 3 times a week. For the folks, as sort of a follow-up question to this, I would be interested to know, are there specific improvements that could be made, or is there a specific destination, like a particular shop or service in your immediate neighborhood that, if it were present, would it make you more likely to walk or bike? The person, I believe at least one person said they don't usually walk or bike. I'm wondering, is there something that the city could work on which would change that, make it more likely that you would? If anybody has any thoughts on that, feel free to put them in chat or speak up.
Yeah, Jackie pointed out that as having a son with special needs, the lack of crossing lights at busy intersections makes it a little bit dangerous and reduces his ability to be independent. So that's a very good point.
Okay.
Maybe not just you yourself getting out walking or biking, but friends, loved ones, people you might care for.
True. Okay, with this next one, I think Milena was going to give us a quick overview of the sort of 15-minute neighborhood concept. I know Marie points out more city activities in the summer, like the Mayor's Cup was years ago. Also, more outside dining in the spring and summer. Oh, I miss outside dining.
Oh, me too.
Oh, I can't wait. Okay.
I'll give us a very small plug. I hope you get a little bit more when the Arts Park is constructed this summer. There will
Absolutely.
be a plaza with some outdoor seating there for you. So enjoy.
Okay, so the whole point of this poll is to kind of track your behavior in hopes of developing what's called a 15-minute neighborhood in the city. So that concept is basically that everything to satisfy your needs is within a 15-minute distance. In the city, it's probably like more like 5 or 7 minutes to make this more of a neighborhood-focused plan, which means that everything you need to function, living, working, supplying, caring, and learning is all within 7 minutes walking distance of your residence. And the whole point of this is to increase convenience for you. And this question asks you, why do you leave your house? Why do you get in your car and leave your house? And that will help us identify what's missing in your neighborhood and how we can help foster that.
And while folks are working on that, Jackie points out, what about making City Hall Place a pedestrian street? That's a good question. Julie notes, as someone mentioned earlier in one of the other ward forums, food truck festivals are hugely popular and greatly lacking in this area. And Donna echoes what Julie said, make City Hall Place a pedestrian-only street. Doug points out these should be multiple choice. I do believe we have 1 or 2 which are multiple choice coming up, but I guess what we're looking for, Doug, that's a good point, but I think what we're aiming for here is maybe what's the most common or the predominant destination. Jackie says they would have picked several of these options, so. Or if the last question had been multiple choice. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share this. And grocery store looks like is the highest rated destination, followed by healthcare, doctors, and parks and rec. But yeah, thank you, Doug and Julie or Jackie. I think going forward, we might make these multiple choice.
I think maybe keep those ideas in mind for when we get to discussing opportunities for change toward the end and things that you would like to see.
Right. That's a good point. Okay. Donna points out we should make Oak Street 2-way. It would be a lot easier for commuting between the schools. Okay. And next question, unless folks have some more, I don't know if anybody's looking to talk. I keep going here. Do you feel comfortable walking in your neighborhood? This gets to, I think, a couple of people have pointed out that there's some issues with lighting in some areas where this might not be optimal. So I'd like to know what people's thoughts are on that. Okay. Just about everybody, I think, has voted. Marie points out that they don't walk alone at night. So clearly, safety isn't fully ascertained there. And go ahead and share this. And majority of folks feel that they do feel comfortable walking during any time of day, but still some folks don't. I think what we'd like to know is if folks have particular areas, of 1 or 2 have already been pointed out, where the safety or the lighting could be improved. Let us know what those specific areas are. Julie points out, I think the police presence throughout the city is excellent and makes me feel safe in general. Shannon says, I think traffic calming features would help. So I think safety walking isn't always just about lighting levels and crime, it's also about vehicle and crossing safety. Traffic calming features would also help. Some of the residential streets that don't have a lot of stop signs become drag strips. And Donna notes that they don't have any concerns about safety from day to evening, but I think the sidewalks could be improved. So that's getting to the actual physical condition of the sidewalks might not be terribly safe. I'm looking to see if folks have any other things they want to note about that. And then getting to the question about, what condition do you feel the city is in? The city can really only affect or have control over the areas of the parts of it that are its jurisdiction. The private sector really controls their own physical buildings and properties. So do you feel that the city should establish design standards for commercial, residential, and industrial development toward helping improve the look and feel of the city? And in some cases, this could, as site planning works out, improve, bike and ped connections as well that aren't part of the public streets. And go ahead and share this. And majority of folks seem to feel yes, they would like to establish design standards. At least one person says that no, they would not like to see. I'd be curious if you let me know why in particular do you feel that the design standards might be a disincentive to development or redevelopment. Let me know why, what your concern might be with design standards. Shannon points out, I don't think it would make a difference unless it was retroactive. The buildings needing the most help have already been built. So that's a good point. But we got to start somewhere. Yes, anybody has any thoughts on why they don't think that design standards will really help? Perhaps that was Shannon, was one of those folks. Okay. And then see if anybody has any more comments. Going on to the next slide, we have where we want to start talking about some of our opportunities. And I'm basically right on schedule. So I'll let Milena take it away from here. Thank you.
Okay, so now is the fun part of the workshop, where we're going to have more of an open discussion around opportunities for change. So the first picture on the screen here, this is just an overview of the wards that we're talking about. I just wanted to pull this up so we're all on the same page. We know what part of the city we're talking about. I think, all right, so our first opportunity for change. This is of Peter Blumet Park. I wanted to include this in the conversation because it seems that most people, not just wards 3 and 4, but most wards feel that there are recreational resources that are missing from their neighborhoods. But the city does have a lot of parks. A lot of them are outdated. A lot of them are underutilized. So we want to hear from you. What are some opportunities for change to make people want to use these parks, want to go to these parks, so that they're part of the social fabric of your neighborhood? So, does this park need more amenities like playground equipment? Does it need more programming? Should it not even be a park anymore? So we just want to get some feedback from everybody about this space. Again, raise your hand if you'd like to speak or use the chat. Either one works. Whatever you're
Yeah, I think folks should have the ability to unmute themselves. Doug points out that each park should have a community garden area. And Julie notes definitely more programming because I think if you offer things for kids and the adults will have to show up and do it. That's true. Donna points out this is actually a nice park. We just don't use it often because it's not as close to where we live. Doug wants fire pits.
Hey, they are useful when you have winter all the time. You can stay warm.
That's true. That's a good winter activity.
Yep.
Some s'mores.
Jackie agrees more programming is needed. And Doug adds more trees. They've been cut down, but not replaced. That's a sad truth in most cities. Unfortunately, we're losing the trees faster than we're getting them back. And
Oops, sorry, go ahead.
No, Marie notes more programming, updated equipment, community gardens, and the fact that the park needs to be maintained, and maybe a splash park somewhere in the city to cool off.
Another arts park plug, Emily.
I was gonna say.
Try not to. So coming up in the, hopefully, but before you reach 4th of July, that's what we're aiming for.
Yep.
Within the arts park, there will be a water feature that will have some spray jets. And it does function as a splash park. It's not the bigger sort of, water park style that you might see with things that dump or shoot things at you. So it will be like a fountain with lights, but you can also run through it. The kids can play in it. But if you have ideas where you might like to see a splash park, if a particular park you think it would be great to have one in, let us know.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's a great example of that in Boston, outside across the street from the aquarium. There's a sculptural park, which is a water feature, but it's basically a splash pad for kids. It's designed to look as art, but it's basically function as a splash pad.
Yeah, these things are very popular, and it doesn't have to be a specific size. As Emily knows, is kind of our guru on those things. It can fit just about anywhere. It can be as big as or small as you have the programming or the interest in.
I just wanted to point out a couple of good comments we're getting. Somebody or Donna pointing out a lot of the houses seem to have pools, as you can see in these areas.
Yeah, I saw that.
And then also a couple comments about having a citywide recreation program and kind of planning, maybe partnering with the town. But Jackie asked whether Peter Blumette Park still has a public ice skating area. And Chris says yes. Thanks, Chris. Just ask the mayor.
Oh.
It's interesting how many comments we're getting in the chats, specifically about recreation and the need for programming, and it almost really makes the argument for a master plan, a holistic view for the entire community.
Donna is also interested in swimming lessons, so maybe something as programming can be increased. That's something to start with. Everybody's got a pool. Let's hope we're
It's a regional thing. It's a regional opportunity.
It really is. It's a big deal. And the thing that's interesting about it is we've actually had, what's interesting is we've had people come to us specifically about splash parks, and they go, no, we want a pool. We want a big community pool. And so there's almost a response to that. And that's exactly why we're listening, because we want to have recreational amenities that fit with the community's needs and the region.
Just want an Indian restaurant.
I'm with you.
Well, yeah, I think Julie points out a good point. You have a lot of park space, but it's not being really utilized. We need to get some activities in there, and I think there's a convergence here of ideas where we can get food trucks and parks together and different ideas and really make things happen.
Indian food truck.
Food truck Friday.
I do love Indian
food truck.
Okay.
No, these are great comments, and I want to point out that Trevor Cole, the town planner for Plattsburgh, was on our last meeting. And I think the idea of partnering, especially in programming and facilities, between communities, because the most of the kids and people kids of all ages don't really know where the boundaries are, right? And so those kind of opportunities, and also to help bring in more volunteers, right? Because the cost of programming can be very expensive labor-wise, but there often are a lot of I shouldn't say a lot, but folks may become inspired to share a skill or share something with others, and that's something that can be worked on. And there you go, and that's using spaces that you have.
We've got ideas for a rotating food trucks
Yeah.
from ward to ward. I like that. That's cool.
That's a
And
good
Marie
idea.
also suggested a
Parks.
sandcastle event at City Beach. I also, how about a snowman building contest right now?
In the winter, there you go.
But
A
I go to
I
the
love,
next
sandcastle.
I
slide,
love this
Elena.
focus on social events because I feel like a lot of this planning has been focused around land use, which I think is appropriate since we're going to be updating our zoning code. But I love all the comments about what other things the city can do to help foster that sense of community.
Well, I think a lot of it's a function of where we've been for the last year. I
Yeah,
think everyone
sure.
is very anxious to become a community again.
Absolutely.
And I think it's, it's also great that not all of this requires building things and requires a lot of major investment. Sometimes it's just programming and using the space you already have.
Yep.
A really good point that was brought up previously was the one that's like, look at this as a regional program and not just a citywide thing, because there's people that come from all over, and Plattsburgh is the main municipality for a long distance.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
So our next opportunity for change we'd like to have a discussion about is the neighborhoods that surround SUNY Plattsburgh. This is Ward 3 that we're talking about right now. So, as you can see, SUNY kind of dominates this district here. And I kind of just wanted to have a conversation about how to better tie in our community with the SUNY Plattsburgh student population. One, and then two, also, there's a movement now to online classes for a lot of colleges. So what happens to all of this infrastructure? How can the city, have a better relationship with SUNY to try to figure that out, to have, help plan for their future, and just, better relationships, I guess. It's really interesting too with these neighborhoods. I don't think there's a lot of student housing, even though it surrounds SUNY Plattsburgh. Most of the student housing is in Ward 6. I just think it's very interesting how that happened.
And maybe tying into that, there's Doug made a comment in the chat, considering zoning changes to eliminate the exclusivity of single family homes in Ward 3 to 4 to allow more 2, 3, and 4 plexes. Maybe that ties into the fact that that's a reason why there's not a lot of student housing, because having students rent an entire house is maybe not as feasible.
Yeah.
And one less recreation vote for concerts in the parks from Julie.
Mm-hmm.
College
They
has
all
a
sound like
fair
really
amount of-
fun things I miss.
Yeah. No, come back. Let's be ready for it.
Sorry, I think we cut somebody off there. Go ahead.
Sorry. So the college has a lot and will continue to have, as somebody just mentioned, because of remote learning and the sort of the demographics of the area, a fair amount of housing that is underutilized or unutilized. And I've often wondered what that housing could be fit for, whether it be housing for seniors or, multi-generational housing. And I have to go back to my special needs son. There's very limited housing for students, for young people who need a supportive housing environment, but there's really nothing. Once they move out of the house, if you have a special needs child, there's no place for them.
Mm-hmm.
I love that concept of multi-generational housing on SUNY Plattsburgh. Like you said, there are dorm rooms upon dorm rooms that are empty. And what a great concept to have seniors living among students. I love that.
I don't think that.
I saw something like that taking place in, I think it was England, but there were some students living with seniors, and it worked out really well for both of them.
Yeah, and that's actually something we're looking at, our higher ed folks, in terms of reprogramming a lot of the dorms and stuff. It's real potential, and it's really good housing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think as one person pointed out, that the student housing's already expanded into some of these neighborhoods and to a point where, they don't necessarily want it to keep expanding. So that's something we need to keep in mind. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we're trying to wrap our heads around what the long-term effects of all this are going to have on campuses like SUNY Plattsburgh, and how that's going to affect the demand for on-campus or student housing in general.
Michael, if I were to look in a crystal ball with our higher ed folks, I don't think we have to worry about expansion for a period of time on housing. And the biggest challenge we have is on the repurposing. I think the SUNY hubs are going to maintain a level of real viability at that size, but it's going to be a challenge. So there's going to have to be some thinking outside the box, and that's why it's important for the SUNY Plattsburgh to be at the table with respect to looking at this comp plan.
Can I just add something too? You're absolutely right, Dan. From what everything we've seen already for folks here attending, the demographics are out there. There's no surprises that the baby boom echo and bubble is coming down, right? But this, I think, to me, and this is kind of a little bit I'm soapboxing, and thank you for listening. I think the opportunity for Plattsburgh as a community is also to help identify what is it that makes the city special, and how do you use that and keep on investing in the things that will make families and students decide to come here, right? And fight the trend, because it's going to be a downward trend in enrollment. And then also, what can we do partnering with folks to help a greater percentage of students who graduate stay or come back to the city, right? And so, not to be answered tonight, but any thoughts like that, because those are going to be really important, I think, for the plan, the goals of the plan, and at least from my point of view.
Absolutely. And I mean, brain drain is a real thing in any of these small communities with universities. And, as Emily plugged at the last sessions, we're going to be holding a work session with SUNY Plattsburgh, a late night session. And hopefully that can be a lot of students on that call to give us their feedback. Well, what would make you stay here in Plattsburgh after graduation? I think that's a big question we need to ask.
And I'll add one final point related to students, and then I want to make sure we get to our other focus areas. But there seems to be commonly a comment we hear a lot is that while students are temporary, they're only around for a couple of years, but if you take one step back and think about, there's almost always a student population. The individuals may change, but you still have a student population. And there can be advantages to that. Sometimes it also comes with challenges, but just something to think about. It's almost a constant rather than a temporary thing. Although who knows what switches to remote learning may bring with it, but there's still likely to be some student population in the city.
Okay, as Emily said, we should probably move on. We're still in Ward 3 here, and we have to go through Ward 4 as well. This one we can kind of cruise through pretty quickly, but I just wanted to include this image as a conversation point. So this is part of SUNY Plattsburgh. This is the rec complex off of Ruger Street. As most of you know, the Saranac River Trail has identified some trail networks through here, which I think is great. And SUNY has a great trail system through here, which is awesome. So we don't really need to have a lot of conversation about what the possibilities are. But on the left-hand side of the screen, on the left side of that purple line is the town of Plattsburgh, but that is city-owned property. That's about 200 acres that the city owns around Flanagan Drive. And I kind of wanted just to hear some feedback about how that could be developed in the future. The city is going through an annexation process to include that in the city so that we can develop it. And we have a loosey-goosey master plan, but I think it'd be great to hear from the community of what they think would be the highest and best use here. Just so you know, it's currently zoned industrial in the interior of the site because the compost facility is there, and the compost facility is not going anywhere. It's not currently operational, but it's not going anywhere. So, the idea is to maybe have some industrial development on the interior of the site, maybe some mixed use along the streets, but any thoughts we're open to.
Julie is suggesting some nice affordable housing targeted toward middle income. I also just wanted to point out that the property does extend all the way to the river, in case anyone didn't know that. So it's from Ruger Street down to the river.
Sorry, this is a really bad photo. I should have skewed it to the left a little bit.
Another vote for middle income housing, townhouses and bungalows.
Yeah, Ruger Street is interesting. It's kind of a transition from SUNY Plattsburgh into single family residential, then into multi family housing, and then into commercial. So it's kind of like that, this interesting transect zone that has quite a lot of different uses. So it'll be interesting to figure out a great mix there. And I think you're right, mixed use housing, affordable housing, et cetera, would be great here.
Milena, is there an opportunity to tie into the baseball field and park space that's to the right of it as part of this?
Absolutely. Part of the Saranac River Trail has been identified on this property along the river. Like Emily said, to the south here is the Saranac River, and there are trails identified here.
Okay. Yeah, because I think whatever you do there, I think would be most beneficial to tie into some of that other area to make it, I think, more diverse.
Another suggestion that, when if this includes housing, to have that include its own park and green space area. And then another suggestion, another vote for yes to the middle income housing and affordable neighborhoods, so that people who would like to stay in the city, have an option for a place to buy if they would like to.
So one of the things that the city of Plattsburgh has at great advantage is low cost electricity. And with low cost electricity, using that as an inducement to bring an employer is important. So just using it to throw electricity at some sort of thing that doesn't employ a lot of people doesn't make sense. But identifying it as an opportunity to bring workers to the area is great. And that space should stay in some way compatible with industrial development. Whether that's big industry that would use the electricity for smelting or something, this is hard to say, but I would say something in the range between high employment, high use electricity for things like plastic molding that's being done in the area already, to controlled environment agriculture, which would be indoor grow for things like, you've seen the greenhouses along the road to Montreal for carrots, not carrots, but tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers and things such as that. But also marijuana, with the state's change in rules coming forward, a controlled agricultural environment there could potentially lure with low cost electricity and developable land and the compost plant there, which they could offload some of their coordinated materials. It could be a great spot to market for just that.
Wow.
I love that.
That has some synergy to it.
Yeah, it really
Absolutely.
does. And I think that what we've seen elsewhere and what's going to happen in New York if this gets passed is it's going to be a real boom. That industry is going to be a real shot in the arm.
And that spot could seriously be one of the best places in the entire state to develop a production facility for marijuana products.
Exactly. Because there's always going to be a need. So you might as well get in front with production.
Doug, could you step to the side a little bit? What's that growing behind you?
It's not what you think it is.
Okay.
That's outside. It's at the community garden.
Nice. It's hemp. Also, a suggestion from Shannon to potentially preserve some of the woodland area because it's got a lot of nice diversity to it. And suggestion to include professional level jobs.
Okay, so our next opportunity for change, this is obviously Route 3, Cornelia Street. This is in Ward 4. I just wanted to include this image because this is the commercial corridor that separates Ward 3 and 4. And obviously, it's where the city ties into the town of Plattsburgh. It's kind of seamless here. You don't know where you're in the city, where you're in the town of Plattsburgh. So I think this is an important conversation for us to have with the town as they're, going through their smart growth planning, updating their zoning code right now. You can see in this picture of Chen's Chinese restaurant, there's no sidewalks there. Route 3 is very, very busy. It's not very pedestrian friendly. So I think the conversation here is around how can we make this more pedestrian friendly? How can we tie in our zoning with the town of Plattsburgh to make this more seamless?
And to that point, if I could build off of that, next door in the town, as part of their smart growth plan, they're working on sort of at least a plan to redesign Route 3 essentially with taking away that middle turning lane in most places and narrowing the road a bit so that they can add sidewalk on one side, on the north side, I believe. And then they're planning a 10-foot wide mixed use path on the south side. Now, granted, it will be some time if and when that's ever realized, but at least it's something to think about as we talk about what do we see the vision for this corridor, what do we want to improve in it, and how can we coordinate with them.
So I'm seeing suggestions coming in for sidewalks, crossing signals, so for pedestrians, coordinated with the traffic lights, putting utilities underground, improving the intersection by Walgreens, adding trees and green space along the road, and a second vote for burying utilities.
Mm-hmm.
I will say the city received a grant a couple of years ago, maybe last year, I don't know. But the Walgreens intersection is on the list for improvements, and that should happen this year.
Oh, wow. Yeah, one of the questions I wanted to pose in my notes is because we're looking at both wards 3 and 4 here, on top and bottom of this corridor, what are the primary crossing points that folks would most like to improve? If we could only improve like a small segment at a time, where would people feel like the best crossing opportunities would be to get from one side of this asphalt river to the other?
So I think it needs to be considered. The one way to stop people from having to cross would be to better manage traffic flow coming up from the campus and from Cornelia Street. Cornelia Street only has a sidewalk on one side of it, from the Den Pubs building or whatever that building is down past the Kinney Drug. So if you were to put more walkability and let people choose how to get to that path, they then crossing at that intersection. One thing I've considered is, why not a roundabout right there where that 5-point intersection is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, I can show the sort of cross section of Route 3 that's being contemplated right now.
Oops.
While you're pulling that up, Shannon's also suggesting protected bike lanes. Well, look at that, a protected bike lane, sort of.
A protected bike lane right here. So this is the new sort of proposed cross section, if you will, of that Route 3. So you have sidewalk on one side, protected bike lane, 4 lanes of traffic, and then a separated multi-use path on the, oh, I'm sorry, I had it backward, on the north side. So that's, essentially, at least in theory, what they're looking at doing. Obviously, this is a great big lift, and it's a long corridor, but something to consider if you want to take back control there.
Oops. Did another suggestion come in to restrict parking along the plaza sidewalk because parked cars block visibility?
Question: if they do that plan that we had just shown, what happens when it hits the city limits? I assume there would have to be ideally some coordination between the town and the city to make that sort of blend it and make it seamless, or hopefully continue at least our own version of what it would be continuing into the city. It's one thing to consider is maybe you don't want it seamless. Maybe you want to demarcate and say, hey, welcome to the city, and then the corridor does something different as you enter, and it becomes a gateway into the city. So I think, Milena, maybe you need to share your screen again. I'm not sure.
Can you see it?
I can see it.
Oh,
Okay.
Then my window disappeared. Never mind.
Okay, so after taking a look at all of those images, we just want to do a quick visual preference survey.
There it is.
New development.
Okay, so one of these questions is, do you think this new development? What do you think of this in a moderate higher density district? Do you think this is a good example or not? I'm going to go ahead and poll. Okay, give folks a few more seconds to vote here. And I'll go ahead and share the results. And it seems that most folks agree it's a good example. Some folks are only lukewarm about it. It's okay. Let us know what you what your concern. For those of you that voted, it's only okay. Let us know what you think would be better instead, or how that could be better. Okay,
Also,
I'm gonna go
what
ahead.
what do you like about it? That's important too.
Well, that's just because John picked the photo, so that's why he wants to know. Just be happy that most people think it's a great example. And then I believe we have this next question about safe and attractive intersections on the main road, such as Margaret, Cornelia, etc. Are these very important, or safety is good, but we're not sure we should be spending all that money on this at this moment?
I love this image too, because I think having a crosswalk that looks like a sidewalk makes people feel that much more comfortable on busy roads like Cornelia Strait or Ruger, et cetera. I think this type of crossing makes all the difference.
I find it interesting that there's a Route 3 in every city in upstate New York, just like the one. And I think they just happened to us. And it's kind of like, I don't think anybody would have painted that picture of what they wanted their city to be like back when those were being planned and developed. It's just a thought.
Yeah.
Donna pointed out with the previous image that their concern with that visual preference image was that concerned about pulling out into traffic because the buildings were so close to the street, I believe.
There was
go
also
ahead and
on-street
share.
parking there. I don't know if that contributed to that as well.
And go ahead and share the results on our crosswalk photo. And so that's good that folks are more interested in making the investment in pedestrian and bike safety. So that's good. I think that's something that in the long term addresses the issue of whether or not the city's in good shape as far as maintenance and attractiveness. So that is good.
So this next slide, those were all images and discussion points in Ward 3. So this is Ward 4, which is north of Route 3. I don't know if we have as many opportunities for change here, but we have a couple to talk through. So this first one, I included this image because, as you can see, this is along Boynton Avenue. The purple line is the city boundary, and you can see there's a large parcel of land that's undeveloped. I believe this area is zoned residential. We're right across from the Melissa Penfield Park here. So we just wanted to have a discussion point of how could this best be developed, thinking about what exists now in Boynton, which in this section is mostly commercial. But as you can see on the south side, residential, west side, residential. So what would be the best use here? Is it, more subdivisions? Is it a higher density residential? Is it more commercial development? So we just wanted to have a discussion around that.
I've actually walked around back there just to get an idea of what it looks like, and that's a highly developable area. I think it's a great space. The owner of the property is probably ready to do something with it. There's a generational change in that family happening. And I believe it's time to approach them with a plan that says, let's build some higher density residential. This is a great place. It's Boynton is a high traffic area connecting to Tom Miller. There's stores and restaurants available up and down that road. And it's really physically close to Bailey Avenue School and Oak Street School, as well as the park. So
And good accessibility off the interstate too.
It's a great spot for
Yeah.
higher density development. If we just put a road through there and put a bunch of more single family houses up, it's not going to do anything for the base of our for the overall capacity that we need, which is increased housing in this area. So
interesting.
Doug, I really like what you said, and I just kind of want to add that right there along Boynton is a perfect location for increased transportation access. So having housing there is it's a great place to put it.
Yeah, and I want to point out that this Boynton is much worse than it could be for bicycle safety and for pedestrian access. It's terrible, but it should be better, and there's no reason it isn't. The only reason it isn't is because we develop for cars, we don't develop for people. If we could change our thinking about that, then we would be in a better place.
Couple of different thoughts on this between higher density residential. I mean, some folks are also pointing out the ability for light industrial or small commercial or specific commercial, like niche grocery stores, are also potential options.
What's the size of that area? Like if you look from the ramp over, because you could almost have like a mixed use whole sort of.
I think it's about 19 acres.
I'm not sure how many acres that is.
Yeah, it's almost 20 acres, as I recall.
I mean, the proximity to the school does really bend the needle toward, tying into a residence.
Because it's almost of the size to where you could have your own little planned community within that, where it would be mixed use. Really is. It's interesting.
Well, this is a great example of the power of a plan, I think, right? Because if you're an applicant or landowner and it's zoned for, let's say, just single family residential, you might just do that, not knowing that the community might want something more, right? And so that a good discussion.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, another poll question. This about these apartments. Do you think these apartments would be really nice along some of the areas of the ward, or possibly a good fit in other parts of the city? I'm going to go ahead and launch this.
So this is kind of a continuation of the conversation we just had about higher density housing in that parcel. So it's kind of just a play on that conversation. If you think this would be a good fit there.
We need more stick-built 5/1s in our community. I'm kind of joking there, so.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share the results. And seems most folks feel that this would be really nice along some of the main roads. Others maybe feel that other parts of the city might be a better fit. But nobody feels it's totally out of place or not a good fit for the city. So that's good to know. Where's that photo taken, John?
That is a good question. I'm trying to remember where it was taken.
You travel too much.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know. I actually think it's in Canada. I think it's in the Canada or Seattle area.
Oh yeah, I think it's Canadian. You can see the St. Elizabeth sign. It's Elizabeth is with an S.
Oh right.
That's what I was saying. Signage is not English, so.
So at least it's not somewhere down south with palm trees.
No, I love all the greenery and the architectural details. It's great.
Yeah, all those front steps. Those are that's a Canadian thing.
Okay, so I think this is our last opportunity for change discussion. This is along the Route 3 corridor. I included this image so we could have a conversation about both the vacant property here behind the Aldi's Plaza and also the, what's the name of this? Like Jade Buffet, Save-A-Lot. I think the plaza has a name. I don't know off the top of my head, which is a
That's
conversation.
Plattsburgh Plaza.
What is it?
Plattsburgh Plaza.
Just Plattsburgh Plaza, okay. Just a conversation about infill opportunities here, which is, similar to the conversations we had with Ward 1 about Skyway Plaza and opportunities there. It's very similarly developed, very car centric. All of the retail kind of surrounds this giant parking lot, which is really underutilized. So just maybe having some conversations about how to, best develop that and infill that space. And then also opportunities for the undeveloped land behind there. Because it's interesting how to the north it's all housing, and then obviously along here is commercial along Route 3. So where can they meet in the middle? What's that buffer zone look like?
Where will the summer homeless people live?
There was a really big homeless community back there for a while.
Was there?
Huge, yeah.
There still is, right?
I'm not sure. I mean, there's been a lot of outreach, so I think a lot of it's been taken care of, but I'm not sure.
So Donna, maybe you could tell us what were you thinking? What shared picture were you looking at? That would be great there.
Shopping center with windows above it. It might have been what we were looking at when we were looking through the Skyway suggestions.
Let me skip forward here. Yes, we have a couple of visual preference surveys. I don't know if we want to skip to those, then we can kind of have our conversation.
Sure,
if
sure.
that'd be
Yeah, let's do
easier.
those.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so and I'm not sure. I assume we meant this for this particular site in general,
Yes.
but we wanted to know how well would you think that this type of this type of development would fit in here? We have basically commercial at the bottom, and it's essentially looks like offices or possibly residential above, but probably offices. Gives you an idea of. But we're mostly looking at the sort of the general character of it, size and massing.
It doesn't necessarily have to be this style of architecture, so don't let that sway you.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to know all of the community space around the shopping plaza as well. This concrete space with benches
Mm-hmm.
sort of creates that social feel.
Okay. I think everyone's had a chance to vote. I'm going to go ahead and share the results. And looks like most people feel it's a good fit or great. Some folks would rather see something else. I'd like to know what is the something else. In the meantime, I'm going to try and go back and figure out which photo Donna had mentioned before.
Is it this one? That's
Oh,
our
yeah.
next visual preference survey now.
Oh, technically, we did use this one earlier for Ward 1, right?
Ward 1, correct, with Skyway Plaza.
Okay. Well, while we're here, I go ahead and what are your thoughts on this pedestrian plaza, which is inside a sort of revitalized shopping center?
I know that one is actually Mashpee Commons at Cape Cod, if you want to know where that's from.
Yep. Oh, I know the photo that Donna is referring to is Pittsford Village. I can maybe pull that one up.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I think folks have had an opportunity to vote. I'm going to go and share the results. Seems pretty much unanimous support. I want to spend time there too, but mostly because it looks warm out. Okay. Do you want me to maybe pull up Donna's the image that Donna was liking? or let me see if I can find it now. Oh, here it is. Okay. Folks can see that. Don, is this that's the one? Okay, yeah. You think that sort of development might be a little bit more in keeping with redevelopment of this area? I think you might be right because it kind of helps bridge the gap between the commercial and the residential. Okay.
Nice job remembering the yellow, by the way.
Yes. And I remember I was like, wait, okay. So Milena, yeah, if you want to wrestle control back from me or.
So just real quick though, Michael, this little color commentary, which I said I would do, this is a project, this is actually next to a National Register historic building. And this was a case where the community planned ahead and they actually did design guidelines and really, we developed actually a site plan for this to help show the developer what the community thought would be successful. And so we developed the plan and the developer built it, so it was really a win-win.
Sounds too easy.
Yeah, well, no, it had to do, I think, right. No, I think it had to do with leadership of the local government went out and did the, did the work. It wasn't like after the fact, they got ahead of they did what the elected official, the chief elected official said that we let's put the planning ahead of the projects, and so
yep,
that's the backstory.
Which is the point of this exercise, right? Of developing this comprehensive plan so we can identify these opportunities.
Yes.
The one thing I like, I don't know if this is why Donna liked it or not, but the one thing I picked up on that picture is I can actually see it retroactively being retrofitted to the Plattsburgh Plaza, like the back end of it towards where the dance studio is in the back. It honestly looks like Plattsburgh Plaza, but just a renewed version of it.
That's good. Yeah, that's the whole intent of the process. And it's like they've done it's like with the mixed use and creating their basically just add water and you create your own mixed use with residential. They've had some areas around here in Saratoga that are fairly similar to that, and it's worked really well. And it's kind of a standalone. It gives you a whole different, sense of community. It's always great to learn from other people's success and sometimes failures.
Donna likes the windows on the columns.
Yeah, I think it's great too, because there's a push in the town of Plattsburgh. I mean, the whole point of their smart growth plan was to create a walkable community center. And I think that's the problem with Route 3 and that commercial corridor is you have an objective, you have an errand to run, you drive there and then you get out, right? You're not parking your car and walking around anywhere. And I think developing infill opportunities like that gives you the opportunity to park your car and walk around and kind of be where you are and enjoy that place.
And what's neat about it is it kind of ties into the DRI as well. I know that's not directly that's not part of this project, but it's all connected in terms of walkability, connectivity. It's about what we want for the livability of our communities in this century, and it all fits together. So you want to have real linkage throughout the community.
Yeah, Donna pointed out they like the windows and the columns. And Julie said that they like the fact that it's not just haphazard businesses thrown into just random space. So.
Can we go back to the Ward 4 picture you had with the Plattsburgh Plaza Shopping Center and that area behind Aldi, the undeveloped area?
Mm-hmm.
So the undeveloped area, I believe, makes good sense to continue single family or potentially add some larger scale multifamily. I don't know what the boundaries of the properties there are, which are important to look at. If it was one big property owned by one person, well, then that's one thing. But if it was a bunch of different little ones broken up, hard to access, et cetera, it changes everything. The road that accesses Aldi, I believe, was developed in such a way that it could be continued.
Yep.
The question is whether or not you would want to create some sort of tie-in, which I don't think you can based on access to the Eastgate Trafalgar area. I think that's a closed community and I don't think there's an alternate exit.
Have to get somebody to volunteer to take their house down.
Yeah, so you don't.
I think actually in the bottom left corner of that Trafalgar Circle, there might be a property for sale right there. I don't know if the city's interested in purchasing that, but I think there's actually an empty lot right there.
I mean, there's a
That
dead end
could-
road right here as well that could be continued and connected.
Right.
Yeah.
So my thought on that, on the undeveloped area, is that it could create a space that will satiate the appetite for single family development, because it continues that area, and then you would have other areas in the city where you would have higher density. I don't know if that necessarily makes sense, especially considering having multifamily there with easy walkability to places like Aldi and the other restaurants and
Yeah.
stuff. If the corridor at Route 3 was walkable and safe, it would make sense. But if it's in its current condition, where you take your life into your hands by approaching that road, then it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I think one thing to keep in mind here is, depending on how that parcel is eventually developed, is it might be useful, if there's not already, to have something on the books that helps to protect that residential neighborhood in the north, to maintain some sort of a buffer between that and any heavier commercial development that might happen there.
Yeah. So that's something that would be something that this community, because I live on that road, would want to rally around if it was approached, if there was some communication in the upcoming plan that says that they're going to put heavy commercial project right next to your back door. I'm sure that they would want to have some buffer built in. So,
What's the current zoning there, Melina?
Off the top of my head, I don't actually know.
Below the houses, it's zoned highway business, and I believe the parcel that Aldi is on actually includes that green space behind it. And with the piece that's behind the plaza being one additional parcel, that rectangle. Also zoned highway business currently.
is it owned by Aldi?
I didn't look into that.
One is owned by
But-
Aldi and the other is owned by Plattsburgh Plaza, according to Christopher.
Okay.
There you go.
So I think with the commercial owners, all things being equal, it's more likely to be continued in that vein, unless we as a community help to shape it in a different direction.
And just that piece behind Aldi is actually part of their parcel. It's just a very large parcel.
So it looks like highway business does not allow for residential development. So that's something we need to look at with our zoning code.
So it doesn't allow for even
Nope.
high density multifamily?
Nothing.
Well, that would definitely need to be.
Does it allow any kind of mixed use?
No.
I don't think anything in the code actually allows for mixed use outright. From what I
No, that's why we have the PUD situation. Interesting.
Yeah, mixed use should definitely be a further integration and consideration for any zoning changes.
Yep.
Yeah. So just to kind of understand where this conversation is going. So oftentimes in a comprehensive plan, the conversation won't allow, I should say, the focus, the budgets, the scope, the funding doesn't allow the kind of conversation we're having now to continue fully at this stage. That what we would maybe highlight is the need for, some detailed discussions about what success looks like, right? For the neighborhood point of view, from landowner point of view, from all the different policy perspectives here. But it's good to have this, looking at this, right, today, to see
I
what.
think we want,
right.
we want to make sure we address the vision. We figure out what is currently allowing us to get there and what's not.
Right.
And then that allows for the next steps to address those roadblocks.
Absolutely. All right, very good.
I'm gonna go to the.
That was a good segue to next steps. So I think we need to wrap it up now. We're at 7:30. We went a little bit longer, but that's okay. We combined 2 wards into this work session. I just want to thank everybody for coming and being a part of this conversation. Like I said, this is a pretty big planning effort, and we're glad to hear from you and get your input. Tomorrow we're going to be holding work sessions for Ward 5 and Ward 6. You're more than welcome to join. You'll have to sit through the first part of the presentation. But alternatively, we are recording all of these. We'll post them on the city's website. We'll put them on our social media. so you have access to them, and you can use the magic of fast forward to go to the end to hear the conversations. Also, we have the city info email address. Please email us if you forgot to say something tonight or you want to add something. We also have a comment page on the city website, so leave your comments as much as you want. We won't get annoyed. We're excited to hear from you. Other than that, next steps, we're going to be taking all this info, and Saratoga and Behan will be actually drafting the comp plan, and we'll be holding another public work session to present that comp plan to the public and get their feedback.
And if you would like to also participate in another type of session and discussion, we'll be partnering with the City of Plattsburgh and the students for their next Late Night for the Planet session, and that will be held on March 9th. So they've got that set up on their Facebook page if you want to check that out, and the city's been sharing it as well.
Anything else we're missing?
I don't think so. I think we're good.
All right. Well, thank you again, everybody. Have a good night.
Yes, thank you for joining us
Be
tonight.
safe.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Christopher, I don't know how you were able to type with your hands full like that. I'm impressed.
He was the one typing, so I mean,
We're hiring, just so you know.
Right.
Bye, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.